gets an interest in something, and then he thinks he's going to be the best film ever at it. And I was like, love his confidence, but it's fun. Yeah. Maybe show you.
Good.
Oh, and are you able to upgrade me to a channel? Yeah.
It's Leo.
Bring Leo. like that Seinfeld where Kramer puts signs outside his apartments, you know? Anytown, USA. The train whistle? No. Did I admit something? I don't. It's a skill I never practiced. I can only do it on the inhale, like suck in and can't whistle out. So if a song has a whistle, I go whistle. Oh yeah, it's like the attention getting whistle. Oh, forget that.
I don't see the on there yet, but you can see him pop on, you know, this kind of.
It's hard enough to peel myself in the field. Okay, so we good?
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we call the meeting to order initially with a roll call for members of the school committee. Tim Knight here.
Michelle Kirkby here. Kristen Simonini here.
Will Horn here. And Leo is not,
Not yet, no.
not feeling well and is going to try to zoom in. And, oh, and you'll let us know, and even if he does come in, just give us a sign or give us a, just so we know Leo's here. So before taking public input, just a quick comment. We're one out comment on the public input as well. There's a lot of topics on the agenda, and we have some awesome guests here today that we want to hear from as well. So for some of the topics, for some of the more operational and whatnot, I'm going to try to keep some of ours, some of the more traditional ones to closer to 5 minutes than 10. You know, we may try to move it along. It's not just, you know, when appropriate, just trying to get through everything. That does not hold to our guests. You know, the guests who are here, we are very thankful that you're here. We want to hear that, and I want to promote all kinds of, you know, whatever communication, discussion is necessary. And public input we'll take at the beginning. And although I'm guessing we don't usually get a lot of public input, but we may impose time limits if needed. That's the idea. I ask members of the committee to also keep me honest in terms of that. So just we can run through everything. And with that, we take public input. Members of the public will be welcome to comment during the public input period, either here or through Zoom. If you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. We ask that you keep your camera on when making Zoom comment, and that you, in either case, that you follow school committee policy for public input, including speaking for no more than 3 minutes and only on topics under the purview of the school committee. And whether you're on Zoom or here, if you could start with your name and address, that would be appreciated. So is there any public input?
Chris Fox, 7 Kirk Street. I just wanted to touch on 3 items that are on the agenda tonight. I have a number of comments and questions that I hope you will put forth as part of your discussion on each of these topics. So I'll start with the budget calendar. Was curious to know where the school committee financial liaison fits into the actual calendar. I didn't see the financial liaison noted anywhere on it. Secondly, at the school committee summer workshop, an excellent suggestion was brought forth to hold a public hearing earlier in January, followed by a school committee vote taking place in later January at a regular meeting. This sequence is common for other Medfield hearings. I haven't heard the school committee talk about this suggestion at all, so I was curious about the status of it. Secondly, second topic is the wellness policy. Based on the actual law and MASC recommendations, wellness program coordinators must report to school committee annually, yet the draft policy only states the superintendent will receive and approve the report. The policy must reference the role of school committee, and that report must be given publicly. Second point on the wellness policy, it should also include the legal references which are provided on the MASC model policy. I would assume school committee realizes that DESE had required this policy to be put into place by July 1st, 2022, and that Medfield was originally due for a DESE administrative review in 2019-2020 with relation to this policy and the wellness program. And I didn't know whether that review had ever happened or whether an extension was given. And then lastly, on school committee goals, I sent all the school committee members feedback on the draft goals, but it's important to reiterate publicly one point here with a final question. Without a review of last year's budget to actuals, a discussion of student assessment data, and also district-wide enrollment, I find it hard to understand how a committee can vote on its own goals when they don't address any of those areas and have a very rich discussion about them. So I'd like to know where that's sort of where that stands. And then also just a passing point, I'm really happy to see the students here tonight. And I wish Molly was here tonight. I know who she is. She's a great student. And I just really hope that the committee will do everything in its power to engage the school committee to wrap the school year in discussions. Because it's really wonderful to hear their perspective. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the room, or are there any Zoom hands raised?
No hands raised, but Leo's on.
Okay, welcome, Leo.
Oh, and can you move Leo to panelist? Thank you.
And if he speaks, we'd be able to hear him. And if he's a panelist, he can speak it in. Okay, thank you. With that, let's look at the consent agenda. And actually, that's pretty basic today. Approval of the regular meeting minutes from September 14th, 2023. And donations. And I took a quick look. I'm not sure. I'll direct it towards Dr. Marston or anyone else on the donations. Is
There's
there
one
anything?
from the Wheelock PTO.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Is there? And I thought there was
right here.
yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, the donations. And should I read through them? So you have $3,000 from
I'm
the.
going to read them everyone.
What's that?
Oh,
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
do- yeah. Sure, yeah, read the donations. Ask that you approve the donations as presented. $3,000 from the Blake PTO to be deposited in the Blake gift account to be used for bus transportation for the grade 6 Hale Reservation field trip. $1,695 from the Wheelock PTO paid directly to Mobile Ed Productions for the Earth Dome performance. $1,411.04 from the Wheelock PTO paid directly to the Plymouth Patuxent Museum for the People of Dawn presentation. And $450 from the Dale PTO to be deposited in the Dale gift account to be used for recess supplies. I ask to approve as presented.
Okay. And I say also a huge thank you. We continue to the various organizations. But a consent agenda. Is there an emotion?
Motion to approve consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Sounds
All right,
unanimous. Okay. Thanks, Leo. Okay. Thank you. I just have the regular agenda. So yeah, if there's others, I may ask for your help on that.
No problem.
Student advisory. Excited. At one point I was like, wait, we're into October. So I don't know, who wants to start and maybe just let us know. This is the first meeting. So tell us who you are and what you have in mind and share
I
it.
think you have to.
Thank you, each one of you, for raising your hand. It's appreciated.
I'm Julia Keating. I'm the rep to school committee for class 2024.
We just had our senior boat cruise, and it went very smoothly, and everyone had a great time. It had a dance floor that was used majority of the time. There was games in the lounge area, so everyone had something to do. It was a great way to start off the year, and it was forced us to bond with each other. I think it was a good start. We are planning a surprise in November for our seniors to relieve the stress of college applications. And then we're making magnets and pennants for our class that says Medfield Class 2024. I think that's about it.
Julia, there's so much going on right now within school and within Medfield and lots of activities, but I know there's also a lot that's happening in the world at large. And I'm wondering, just your perspective as a senior and sort of seeing a lot of the kids, like how's everyone doing? Are the kids okay?
I think so, yeah. I know it's a lot's happening, but I think we're all doing pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judith.
Hello, my name is Michael Ross. I'm the rep to the school committee for the class of 2025. And we've had a good start to the year, and in our class officers meetings, we've started planning writing holiday cards for active military right around the holidays. It's still in the planning stages, and we also sold some dog leashes at Medfield Day just to raise money for prom and other class activities. And we were planning on maybe offloading them to a local business, but that's also still in the planning stages, and we're emailing and reaching out. And we're obviously excited for prom. And
Gillette again, right?
Yeah.
Good. You guys talk about a menu yet?
no, not yet.
Okay. It's very important.
Are you guys on track for the fundraising for that?
Yes.
Dog leashes is pretty creative. I never would have thought of that, actually. I don't
Yeah,
have a
we-
dog, but I would buy one from you anyway, just to do it.
We started that last year, and we have a couple more to sell. So we're looking to find ways to sell.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Hello, my name is Tess Baki. I'm the representative of the sophomore class. The start of the year was pretty good. It was really smooth compared to freshman year from that transition. And for our student government, we started planning a Halloween movie night. So this would be just like a class event to like bring together like the 9th and 10th graders. And it would be like completely free. We just feel like it would be like, I feel like the 9th and 10th graders don't get as much like, because the upperclassmen get prom and everything like that. So we just wanted to like bring them together. And then we are also working on volunteer hours, like community service. And so this would be at the senior center for our grade. So just more like ways to get involved. That's about it.
Have you guys done that before, the senior center?
I'm not sure. Like our grade personally hasn't,
Yeah.
but maybe other grades, I'm not sure.
Tess is one comment. I'm not sure I heard it right. So you're saying you're doing something for the freshmen and sophomores?
Yeah, we're working with the 9th grade class.
All right, and that might even be part of the first comment, where the start of the year was good, and you said the transition was a little easier.
Yeah.
You're probably sharing wisdom with those 9th graders, too, so theirs is going to be easier. I guess that's no pressure for our 9th graders. But, thank you.
Thanks, Tess.
Thanks, Tess.
Thanks, Tess.
I'm Ashley Gatsingino. I'm the representative for the class of 2027. Our officers were just elected, so we haven't been able to have a meeting yet, but we're planning to have one on Tuesday, so we can start talking about things that we want to do this year, and then also to start planning the movie night with the sophomores.
Excited to be here. So
Yeah.
this is great. You know, we're gonna- student reps here. Wow, at one point I thought it wasn't on the agenda. And I think we have to do it every other month.
Every
but
other, yeah.
Right.
yeah, no, it's good. You thank you. You're welcome to stay for the whole meeting, but you're not required to stay for the whole meeting.
Look, they're running away.
Oh my gosh, she didn't even let me finish.
That's a great lead. Great lead. I don't have to stay the whole meeting.
Okay. So next is the principals.
So back to the principal.
All right, so I think we just need the volume. Is the volume on the computer or is that Leo? You,
Leo unmuted himself, but he should be good now.
okay,
Leo?
Okay.
thank you. So yeah, the principal's opening report.
No, you guys don't need to hear my coughing. Or you don't need to hear my coughing and my sniffles. It's totally fine.
Okay.
All right.
Who's up first?
Robert's up.
Robert's up first.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. Robert Parker, principal of the high school, and I'm pleased to provide a report on the opening of school for Medfield High School for this year. In general, we had a smooth opening. I want to take this opportunity to thank our head custodian, Keith Vogel, and his team for getting the building ready for our return. As we know, the work they do over the summer is very important. They're often in hot and uncomfortable conditions here in the building. But as always, the building looked great for the return of our students and staff. As we normally do, we kick off the opening of school with our senior cruise, what Julia alluded to. It's a highlight for our seniors and a wonderful way to reconnect with them after the long summer. For those of you not familiar with the senior cruise, it takes place in the Boston Harbor, includes a dinner and a dance. The weather was absolutely spectacular on that evening, and it's something that we've done for about 10 years now, where we used to do it in the spring, we moved it to the fall, and we do it on the second day of school, which sort of makes for a long night for us chaperones and a
Sure
long
does.
Friday the next day. But it's important. It's great to start off the year that way and a great bonding experience as our seniors embark on an important year. So always a highlight for the adults that go on that trip as well as the seniors. In terms of goals and initiatives for this school year, we're excited to lean into the district's new strategic plan. Among other items, we are continuing our work to further develop our cultural responsive teaching strategies as we strive to develop an environment for all of our students that focuses on equity, belonging, and wellness. As a staff, we have professional development scheduled on this topic, and we'll continue to use faculty and department time as well. As a result of the work that we've done in this area over the past year, we've created more opportunities for student voice. We've done activities in class to build relationships and trust with our students. Recently, our students participated in advisory where they were able to share with us different items and experiences they've had here at the high school that have provided them with a sense of belonging. And we also are in the process of collecting some feedback from them in terms of what we can do as a school to be more inclusive. So we're still gathering that data, but the students are fantastic in their ability to articulate how they feel and being able to provide with some good feedback. Communication and engagement is always one of our top priorities here at the high school, and we'll continue to provide our weekly school news updates for our students and families. We found this to be a great way for folks to stay informed. One slight twist to our updates for this year is we're calling it a handbook highlights. We have found that many students and parents can't always keep items in the handbook at the forefront for lots of reasons. So one of our assistant principals, Brenda Hagan, is actually highlighting an aspect of the handbook into our news update every week, and the feedback we've gotten on that has been really positive. In an effort to continue strengthening the homeschool partnership, we are hosting teacher conferences here at the high school, and those will take place next Wednesday and Thursday. The purpose of these conferences is to provide an opportunity to share updates related to student progress, including student strengths and areas of improvement. Parents have been signing up for these conferences over the past week or so. As of this morning, I think we had over 900 individual appointments set up for the 2 days. So the response has been pretty good. And parents have the opportunity to either come in for a conference or they have a Zoom option. And it appears as though we're close to about half and half. So many parents opting for the Zoom option. So we're looking forward to these meetings. We also have a similar format set up for the spring, and we're going to take sort of our experiences this fall to see if there are any tweaks that need to be made, and then we'll incorporate those into our spring conferences, which will take place in March. Also this spring, we'll be submitting our NEASC 4-year report. The item that is left is for us to complete is finishing the curriculum maps. This is important work that's been ongoing, and these maps will allow us to be more consistent and how instruction is delivered in the classroom and how topics are covered from teacher to teacher. Professional development for staff obviously continues and is ongoing. We're continuing to provide PD this year in the area of differentiated instruction, grading for consistency, as well as providing additional training for teachers who teach AP courses. This year, our 9th grade teachers have been meeting regularly to discuss the 8th to 9th grade transition. We just had our second meeting last week, so those will be ongoing throughout the year as well, with the hopes of improving that transition process. Also new this year, we've instituted cell phone caddies into the classroom. As we continue to look for ways to improve the learning experience for students and our staff, we've been discussing different ways we can curb the distractions that phones can cause in the classroom. But, we do use cell phones for certain classes. However, for the most part, students are asked to put them away. I think Jeff's going to share some data a little bit later in the meeting. We surveyed staff, and over 80% of them have noticed a significant difference in more effectiveness in terms of their classroom management with these caddies. So I'm happy to report that we've made some headway, a significant headway in that area. And of course, extracurriculars are always a big part of the experience here at the high school. You might have seen some of the decorations in the hallways. This is Spirit Week here at MHS, and it's going to culminate tomorrow. Well, with tomorrow's pep rally, that will be taking place outside in the afternoon. This year we have 45 clubs, which is, I think, the highest number of clubs that we've had in my 13 years as a principal here. And we also have over 60 students who are participating in our fall musical. That musical will take place over the weekend in November 17th. This year's musical is Grease. So we hope you can come out and watch that and support our students. And also next week, we're going to be hosting 7 students from France. They'll be staying with host families for about 2 weeks. These students will attend school during the day and shadow their host student. So as you can see, there's never a quiet moment here at the high school. And finally, I'm excited to introduce Christian Roth, one of our seniors. Christian Roth, come on up. He is starting his second year as a member of our site council team. And one of the items we're going to be working on this year is how we can better support our seniors throughout this whole college process. As you know, it's very different from when we were going through it as high school students. And as a parent of 2 kids in college, I have that perspective, and I get a good sense of what it's like at home. And certainly living in the building with our seniors, you can really see the impact that the process has over the fall months. Christian is, like I said, a senior, and he's sort of knee deep in the application process, and the November 1st deadline is coming for our students. So as a school, we've tried to do a lot of things to really understand and acknowledge the fact that our students have a lot on their plates. Our guidance counselors work closely with our students over the past month and going into next month. Our teachers are well aware that, our students have a lot on their plates as well. So trying to be very flexible with them as these November 1st deadlines are looming. But Christian's going to share his thoughts. He's been a wonderful addition to our site council team over the past year or so. And he's going to help us going forward in site council this year as we try to, identify some areas that we can do here at the school to improve the process for the students. So Christian, I'm going to go to you for a few minutes.
Hello, my name is Christian Roth. I'm a senior here at Medfield High School, and I'm just here to talk about how the college application process has been for me and how the school has helped and stuff like that. So first off, I want to say overall, I think the school is doing a very good job in supporting us as students during this college application time, and that has already started last year when our guidance counselors all made sure that we had asked a teacher for a letter of recommendation before we left last year for summer break. And then this year we've already had a couple of class meetings in the auditorium with our guidance counselors where they have like a whole slideshow and just giving us information about what we have to do, what the school does, and how it all works and everything. And then guidance counselors have been very good at reminding us like when certain things are due, like the transcript request form, stuff like that. And I think just overall the communication from the guidance counselors and the school has been very good. Like it's always very clear when something is due or when something needs to be done, and they're good at communicating that. And then some things I felt that were really helpful here is just having Flex just in general, because you can sign up for sign up to meet with your guidance counselor during flex, and that's just the perfect time. Like you're already at school, you just sign up real quick and head down there and have a conversation with your guidance counselor. Very helpful. Also, in one of my wellness classes, for one of the classes, we just had a guidance counselor come down and just chat with us, and then go around to each student and ask them like if they had any questions or anything, which I thought was also very helpful. Of course, this only applies to people who have wellness first semester, but I thought that was helpful as well. And then for me personally, balancing schoolwork and the college applications and stuff like that hasn't been too terribly difficult. It's been pretty manageable, but of course, everyone's different. Everyone has different things going on, and it can be different for every person. But people, like, there's other people that have already written their college essay over the summer, so it's not as much pressure now, stuff like that. And but I also think that like teachers are aware that this time is like pretty intense and stressful for us, so they take that into consideration. And one of my teachers was actually like, oh, I know you guys are going through this whole process, so I'm gonna lighten up the workload a little bit, and I was very thankful for that. And then one thing that I struggled with was that it was coming up with like a topic for my college essay, and I like just didn't really know how to get started at all, or like what the format's supposed to look like, or how to structure it. So I thought it might be helpful if like the school had like a doc or a page that says like how to get started with your college essay, maybe some questions on there that like help you get your thoughts going, or like just a general outline of what it's supposed to look like, because I really had no idea. Or maybe some examples from which you can read those and see, oh, this is kind of what it's supposed to look like. Because for me, I was just like, like is this like an English essay type thing? Is this like how do I even approach this? And but yeah, I think overall the school has done a great job in supporting us during this application process, and yeah, that's it.
Christian, I'm not going to tell you how many years, but it's been a lot of years since I went through the process. The way it works now, are you doing different essays for every application?
No.
Okay.
We
It's
have
shared.
one college essay in Common App that gets sent to all the colleges, but then some colleges may have a like specific prompt for that college, which is normally a bit shorter and a specific question that the college has picked out, as opposed to the general question that gets sent to everyone.
Okay. So
Yeah, that's very common. There's supplemental questions.
Right.
Vary from university.
And how many applications are you doing, if you want to say?
Well, I'm doing one application for early decision, and then we'll see how that ends up. And then for regular decision, if I don't end up getting into my early decision choice, I'll have more options. But right now I'm just focusing on one application to do early decision.
I'll never forgive Boston College, who I did early decision for and got deferred. And I had to wait to be told no, like, why, 5 months later, I still will never ever cheer for the Eagles for that reason. Apologies to any Eagles.
But you bring a good point in the process. What the student experience doesn't make it is the waiting for the answer.
Yeah.
Right? And the thing that I don't know that people realize as much is the process is so more public, so to speak, than it was for us. So I think it's hard, and one of the things that we've talked about with staff is really supporting the students, the seniors, through this process, because some students will hear back in even as early as late November and then December, and then the holidays come, everyone wants to know, but they might not have heard back, or they got deferred, and then it lingers into the spring. So it doesn't just end at November 1st. We talk about I hate the process. It is the process, but we don't like the process. But it does make it challenging for students who, you're in class and, person next to you has already heard, and you're still waiting when it's February or March. That makes it really
Christian, you give a lot of credit to our guidance counselors here, which is awesome.
Yeah, you muted.
Yeah, no, he's
But
Sorry.
have we closed the loop on like that part of it? like, do we have stuff? So I totally think what you just mentioned is so important. Like when the kids don't get into their first choice, where are we? So the guidance counselors help you through the process, but have they talked to you at all about like how to handle it when you get in or if you don't get in and that stuff? Or has it just been like process oriented so far? Or there, and if it's not guidance counselors, is it other people?
Most of the stuff so far has been like the process and the actual writing the application and applying and how that all works. There hasn't been much talk of what if don't get in or
Yeah.
do get in or stuff like that, but I mean, nobody has heard back yet. So.
Yeah, of course. And I appreciate that your principal's right here and naming that, because I think that is where, you know, there's stress to get to deadlines, but then all of a sudden when people start posting on Instagram or however you guys do it now, that they're in, I think any work there would be awesome to help with the kids, like kind of like how do you announce that you got in? How do you support a friend that didn't get in? And that stuff where there's a lot of, you know, anxieties.
Yeah, and it's very fluid. Not everyone, or
Yeah.
a lot of people are applying by November 1st, but
Right.
we have students that are submitting applications all over the spring.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's, you know, it's constant. The bulk of them definitely do take place around November 1st, by November 1st. but
Sure.
We will be a series of students who are, you know, the holidays and on the other side of the holidays still applying.
Yeah, of course.
What I wonder, just to follow on, and I would think there's a certain element, and with my daughter, there's some mentorship and coaching that gradually occurs. You know, it's with guidance counselor, you eventually find that one that, because some of it will be so procedural, but then it's unique what every student goes through. It is interesting to hear that reminder too, because it's so much to do to hit that November 1 deadline. But listening to students over the last few years too, it's more that January till, you know, Marchish, the ups and downs are really challenging. So I think that, you know, like it's probably like what I heard over and over here. It's also the relationships you're building, and which I think we're continuing to do more for that. Because I'm glad you're standing here today, and you know, I hope you get a positive answer on that first choice. But it's no matter what, it's a tough process. You know, I think that the great news is as students graduate, you have so many choices, regardless, and that's what I would always try to remind folks is like, hey man, you know, whatever your goals are, you have such great options, typically.
Robert, I had a question around the conferences.
Yes.
So this is the first time that the high school is doing conferences. Can you talk a little about how it's working in regards to, I'm guessing every parent doesn't get to meet with every teacher. How long are each slots? How many slots are parents allowed to sign up for? How many slots are teachers having? Just a little about the logistics behind how it's going to work.
Yeah, we didn't put a restriction on the
Okay.
number of teachers that parents can meet with, so I don't have the exact data on the number that each parent has signed up for, but any parent could sign up for all if they wanted.
And how long are they?
They're 5-minute conferences.
Okay.
And we have 32 slots. Each teacher has 32 slots, 32 or 33 a day. So
Okay.
on back-to-back days. So for the most part, there's still, even, you know, we opened up the window for signups, I believe over a week ago, and as of this morning, we still have, well, we've had plenty of signups. So
Okay.
if a parent wanted to see all the stuff, they could. And we also communicate to families that for whatever reason, if the teacher you had just didn't fit in the slot or you weren't available, just to reach out to us.
Okay. And then I know the elementary school's summer R&D was very focused on the math, bringing her up to speed on that. I'm curious about some of the summer R&D that happened in the high school, and if anything came out of it that you plan on being able to utilize this year or next year, or anything you plan on continuing to study.
Yeah, I think Matt might talk a little bit about the cultural responsive
Okay.
stuff that is still ongoing for us. I was part of R&D that was really focused on some of this work that did for conferences. Because,
Okay.
you know, it was for the first time through it. So we had a faculty committee that worked with us in the spring and into the summer in preparation for these conferences. And, you know, we were looking at everything from determining like how much time should it be, what preparation do our teachers need in advance of these conferences, any, you know, words of advice and things that we can give them. So when we returned in the In the fall, we spent time in our first 2 days working with teachers in terms of preparing them for these conferences. Again, I don't anticipate us having to do that every year. It was the first time
Right.
for us, so we wanted to make sure that we got this off on the right foot. So that was important work that took place.
You know, Christine's getting teachers together for one of the November meetings to present some R&D too.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. Good to know.
I had a couple questions too. One was on the, I'd love to hear the 8th and 9th grade teachers, trying to get together and thinking about the transitions. Any kind of examples of key themes or ideas or anything that is coming up?
No, I think there's only been 2 meetings, and I think more of it is trying to identify what gaps are there, what are things that we need to do, some trends that we're seeing from students coming in, how we can smooth that transition. So we haven't reached the point yet where we've implemented anything, but these are going to be ongoing meetings that are going to happen throughout the year.
Wait, is it 8th and 9th or just the 9th grade?
Just the 9th
It's the
grade
9th, it's just the
yeah.
9th grade
The
teachers.
teachers who are
Two
the
9th.
8th and 9th grade
Well-
transition, but the meeting is the 9th grade.
Right.
The teachers who teach 9th grade.
No, that's good. It's
Yeah, I
also
mean, like
that-
today in our leadership meeting, and some of the 9th grade teachers were in our leadership meeting, they talked a lot about, one of the things we're seeing is just sort of helping students be just more organized. They come to high school and they're balancing 5, 6, 7 classes, an extracurricular, that's maybe 5 to 6 nights a week in terms of a commitment. So there's just a lot more on their plates just from one year to the next. So we were talking about even the details of like agendas, written agendas versus, like Google Calendars, and what would be the best way to sort of support students to keep them organized. So really just even drilling down to that level so that, what we're seeing our students are a little bit overwhelmed when they come up because they've just got a lot going on, more so than they've had before, and just trying to manage their week. Flex has been a big help for them, but they are coming into our building not having experienced Flex before. So we're working with them on how to utilize and take advantage of the Flex time that they have throughout the course of the cycle. So they're getting there, but it definitely takes time and they just haven't had that experience.
We've also talked about, making leadership in terms of having a executive functioning course that all freshmen take. Just try to get the organizational piece, the homework piece, how to balance it all, to design a course that it's a requirement. Everyone takes it in 9th grade and hopefully gets them over the hump.
How
So
much-
that's something we've talked about too.
How much face-to-face time, or is it a class? I don't know how we do it here. Do 9th graders have with guidance counselors? Like, do they have any time first semester with them
The guidance counselors see everyone at some point.
at one point throughout the semester?
Correct, throughout their first year. But
Oh.
they do have Flex, so they check in regularly. The guidance counselors go into freshman classes, then to advisory committees, groups of students.
Oh, okay. So
And
you go
they-
to advisories.
And they
That'd be a
met with
great
them in
touch
8th
point.
grade too.
Yeah.
So the high school went down 8th grade and met.
Yeah, that's the first sort of introduction. We started that a few years ago. So the high school guidance counselors meet with every 8th grader in the spring of the 8th grade year,
Oh, awesome.
1-to-1.
Great.
But just to kind of begin to build that relationship, so when they come in the building, it's another.
At least know the face when they need help getting organized. Yeah. Awesome.
That one's great too. I know that topic came up from one of the student reps last year. So it's also good to
It's
hear.
always, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, it is, it's a transition, no pun intended, it really is, and there's, when students get to this level, there's just so many opportunities for them. And, we're just trying to build the supports for them, so they can do all the things that they want to do here, yet still so they can manage it all as well.
I had one other question for Christian, which is, can you talk a minute or two about your role on site council? How did that come to be, and what maybe like what a meeting has looked like in the past?
So last year I was just, Mr. Parker had selected me to join site council. I said, okay. And then
Actually, the process is I meet with guidance, and we kind of just go over, a list of students that would, that they feel we could be able to come and contribute to that council. So what I ask the students is to sort of make a 2-year commitment. So we always have a junior and a senior on site council. So after Christian was the site council member last year, the junior, so now he's transition.
right. So we just meet like about once a month and just discuss some things in the school, like some new ideas we might want to implement or other various things going on right then, and just I'm just there to give like a student input on those ideas, and yeah, just talk about whatever's on the agenda.
So we have 2 students, 3 teachers, and 3 parents.
That's good. That's good. Thank you for doing that too.
Cool. Nice, Christian. Good luck with your.
Yeah,
college
good
stuff.
luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, thank you, Christian. And I'll throw out, I'm guess, are you staying for? Okay. I'll hold off on the other.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christian.
It's, I mean, it's the first of the business.
You want to move it up now, or? It's up to you
After,
guys.
after, you know,
After that.
Yeah.
Yeah, would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
you're
absolutely,
right.
absolutely.
You're talking about the cell
I
phone
wanted to make
stuff,
sure you-
right?
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, that was, so there was no secrets. One of the things I just suggested was, we have a cell phone survey results on the agenda. We'd love to have you guys here for that, so we're gonna try to bring that forward. Sure. So we weren't saying, hey, what color's that tie? And
Love your tie now. Love your tie.
All good. Probably heard it all before, so.
Still
Thanks
talking
for
about the
coming.
haircut.
Probably not even the hair, whatever, it's all good. So thanks, and Tim, I'm gonna take to heart that you have no time limit on us tonight, so I figured.
Oh, gosh, I forgot about that.
Have you ever seen in that
I
presentation?
assumed that was for me, so thank you.
No time, no tears.
Yeah, all good, all good. Well, I can't promise the tears, you know that. But genuinely, thank you for being here, for the opportunity. I want to thank school committee, central offices, our custodian support staff, as Robert said as well. And also, I just want to say it's awesome seeing our former Lakers. It's awesome. So that's great. And also, I just want to, it has been a really nice start to the year. And I would say, I can't speak for all, but definitely most, it's been a smoother start to the year than we've had in the past few years, truly. A lot of what we were really experiencing, students are just manifesting as more school ready. And I think just from the accustomed to being in school and routines of school, and we're really seeing that, which is just a really nice transition. And I would say in true reality, a calmer start. If you remember last year, we were dealing with a lot of devious licks, a lot of behaviors going on that was not unique just to Blake or other schools. But, knock on wood, well, hopefully tomorrow we won't also have a resurgence. But and they are middle schoolers, but truly it's been a really nice start to the year. And I think that is true for staff and students, and some families have shared that as well. In some ways, met with a couple families today, and they were saying that they're back to what they feel like is the routine of chaos of the fall of school that they hadn't felt in a few years. So that was great. I also want to thank just our MCPE, PTO, MMA, CPAC, just support, some contributions so far already this year. It's just been wonderful for all of us. I do want to just take a couple minutes and really thank our community on a few things. One, it's been a couple of years since Kelly has started the full year with us. That's just been wonderful to have Kelly Campbell, our assistant principal, has had different medical leaves, and that's been wonderful. And I'd be remiss, the last time I spoke with school committee, Marsha Berkowitz was still on our staff, and she's been in a lot of different capacities. She's not with us right now, but I just want to thank her for really helping us through those transitions. And genuinely, it has been a very emotional few months for our staff with some health needs of our staff. And I just want to give a real thank you to our community, and I'll name them publicly. Jason Heim was diagnosed with cancer this summer. He and his wife, Margie, both teach at Blake. He's doing really well, but it's, and his treatment is going well, but that was definitely a big emotional impact on our community. In addition, our school psychologist, Kristen Corcoran, had a very sudden and pretty serious brain bleed this summer. And she's on medical leave right now. And she just returned home today, which is good news, but a long road of recovery. And also, I know Robert Yaya, one of our Mandarin teachers as well, some medical conditions. And I'm naming the ones that we know. There are a lot that are unknown too, but I just want to really testament to this community of Medfield, which I've always loved. So thank you. Just, going through, our priority at all times is a safe and supportive learning environment. And Robert talked about Keith getting the schools ready. Our custodial staff, Matt Frazier, is the most positive individual I've ever met in our life. Loves kids and really works well to make our schools ready to go at all times. And that's been wonderful. Tricia, Megan, student services from a health needs, and really adapting, as I said, to a smooth start of the year, and our administrative assistants working behind the scenes at all times. From an enrollment perspective, we are starting the year with about, I think, 2 more students than we did last year. Total number, we have 192 in 6th, 192 in 7th, and 208. And breakdown of 21 new students to Medfield in our middle school. 12 new 6th grade students, 1 new 7th grade student, and 8 new 8th grade students. A couple students who have returned from private schools within Blake, and then also just moving in the natural additions that we have throughout. And including reconfigurations and reassignments of staff, we have 15 new Blake staff members this year, which is pretty typical. Safety protocols, always really important. Our COVID protocols are still in place, which for some feel a little outdated, potentially. Just thinking like, are those going to change? And those are followed by DESE and the CDC. Facility updates, really want to thank support from central office and all of you for helping to fund all the needs in our building. Roof work was continued throughout. New carpeting in our counseling office and new flooring in a number of classrooms. HVAC updates. We also had installation of interior cameras at the middle school. And then also I really want to thank both our district and MCPE for our beautiful new auditorium, which was definitely in need of some TLC for a long time. And it's wonderful. So that's great. From a support for students, that's our priority. And I would, really think about it. I think, Kristen, you maybe have been alluding to that earlier in the sense of and you've heard me say this, I'm significantly concerned about the well-being of our students. What we're seeing nationally, we are seeing locally. Our statistics reflect that. Mental health is significant. I do really believe that we are having a mental health pandemic of our adolescents. And our data is reflecting that too. We will be giving the Metro Adolescent Health Survey this year. Again, it's on a 2-year cycle. I'm not a doomsday, but I do anticipate it's going to reflect what we're seeing. And that's important. And I will say that sometimes there's conversations about resilience. Is it kids these days? I don't believe so. I think the environment of our world right now is very different than it was. And it's hard. It's hard to be a kid. It's hard to be an adolescent. And I think we have to always be thinking about that. With that, we've been working a lot with Medfield Outreach and Kathy McDonald partnership with Mary Hawes and Kathy McDonald. And that partnership has been really strong, and I'm thrilled. It's great that they're on campus with us and working both with the high school and the middle school and working together. Looking at our supports for students and staff, social thinking curricula, we know that we need to do a much more explicit job in that of teaching and taking time. Stacy Burns, our adjustment counselor, is going into advisories, having cluster meetings, working on some explicit teaching of some of the social emotional learning strategies and looking at that. And really looking at a strengths-based approach versus a deficit-based approach, really to a lot of our work with kids. With that, I mentioned last year was the first year that we really solidified a support program for students who are struggling for whatever need, and it's our Bridges program. And it has, we knew if we established the program that the need would be there, and it's there. And it's really helped students who maybe returning from hospitalization, may not be school ready, may be having a hard time getting to every class, may need some partial days. And it's a support that's within the school day that is really allows them to have a structure of school that can transition in and out as needed. And it's just been phenomenal. I want to thank you for supporting the financial support of that, which has been excellent. It's an unfortunate program that we need, but it's a necessity. And we know we're seeing some of the challenges younger and younger too. From some structural things that we're really working on that ties to, the strategic plan as well as our school improvement plan. Our student support team processes, we've updated the referral process, really looking at trying to incorporate, making sure that we're getting feedback from all staff when we're looking at trying to support a student. Typically, if a student was struggling and we referred to the student support team, we'd get feedback from all their traditional academic teachers. We're making a concerted effort to hear from all their teachers as well, because they really bring a different lens and kind of think, well, is this student really doing really well in their art classes or their wellness classes? What is it there, and can that bridge into our other classes too? From goals for the year we have is looking at our cultural learning, really trying to lean on research. And our theme for this year is belonging. And I think that ties directly to our work that is the priority in our strategic plan. And really thinking about, oftentimes the terms DEI, B is really being much more into that. And that's really important, that sense of belonging. We talk a lot about a safe learning environment is critical for all students and staff and families to access learning. And really one piece too is really thinking about a trite phrase, I think, is to say, will you belong? I can't tell you belong though. I want you to feel like you belong. I'm really trying to tap into what is it in our student body, our student body is more diverse than it's ever been. From an outside lens, Jeff and I talk about this a lot. It doesn't look it on numbers, but it is more diverse. And I would say in a lot of different ways too. And really thinking about kids that don't fit the air quote Medfield mold.
They don't fit the air quote Medfield mold.
I love the surround sound for me too. But so I think that, and I know that's a critical piece. Our mission that we always want to think about too, as we're looking at it, Robert had talked about the culturally responsive practices. That's a big piece I'll talk about in a sec. Looking at our building curriculum accommodation plan, our advisory team did some R&D this summer, looking about some of that curriculum that we can do some explicit teaching. Culture of feedback, we are continuing that we've done the interim check-ins of students. So this is the midpoint year of term, or in the year of term 1. So kids will be taking time to reflect in advisory, giving us some feedback about how they're doing, really tapping into their own feedback. Also informal feedback, the MCAS results just came in, for families, we're looking at that with a very close eye. And also I'll just say putting into context as well, knowing that it is a one-time snapshot test, but it is an assessment of our practices and looking at how our grading practices are reflecting. Do they mirror, do they not? Are we surprised? And also looking from a curricular examination. Are there some curricular adjustments we need to make? An example of that is if, let's say on question 7, we found out that 20% of students in our school got that question wrong. Why is that? Is that a surprise to us? Do we have a curricular issue? Is that like an aggregate issue or is it a micro issue? I'm really looking at that transition that we're working with our department chairs and our teachers to analyze as well. And then looking at the individual level too. The panorama surveys, taking that into account. And as I said, the Metro West Adolescent Health Survey, we give it this fall. We won't get the results until next year, but that will be part of it too. And then culturally responsive practices, Robert mentioned, it's been a big piece of work that Brenda Hagan, assistant principal at the high school, and I have been really working on trying to work 6 through 12 and also working with the elementary principals to work on together this summer. The district funded some R&D, a team that had representation of 2 teachers from each building, along with administrators, to look at how we can have some solidified practices so that it's not a stilted approach. So that are there some things going on at Memorial that we could use at Wheelock or that we could use at Blake, and how does that translate? Some common language for staff as well. And our staff has been very clear about wanting some more professional development. And knowing that that's, as you know, I wish we had 180 days of professional development, but really looking at, we know that Brenda and I would work with Jeff to look at some formal professional development we can do in January, and thinking also, can we do some work potentially to do some education work with that professional, with families as well? Because I think that's a really big thing that we really have to be thinking about. What does that mean? And I firmly believe with a lot of these things, it should not be one-off teaching. It's got to be integrated into every course and what that looks like. And some courses I think may feel like a more natural fit, but a lot of it comes down to relation building and meeting students where they're at. And I know I'm oversimplifying it, but that's a lot of the work we're looking at. And continued partnerships with safe schools, and really following that we're making sure we're aligned with the DESE mandates. All of this work does align with what our commissioner and our Department of Ed is saying we need to be doing this work. So we're mandated to do this work. We want to make sure it makes sense. From feedback and reporting, from feedback from staff and families, we have condensed the 7 learning skills down to 4 that we think are more sustainable feedback. That also I think will help to transition a lot with the high school, looking at some of the skills that we believe are important for them to move forward. And also doing some more concerted work. 8th grade math has done some really nice work looking at student portfolios and thinking about that way of archiving work, which, looking ahead, I don't think we're there yet to really build them into the conferences, but that's a potential. And thinking about some student-led. As Robert said, this fall, we're starting conferences. We're a week following the high school, and it's a different structure. Knowing just a couple things. One is, we do have the cluster model. It's a different model. And our structure, Michelle, I'll answer the question that you might ask.
Yes, thank you.
We are doing it in 10-minute increments,
Okay.
Which reality will mean about a 7-minute conference, 6 to 7 minute conference. And so it does limit the number of pieces we have. We have a potential over the 2 days that are about 32 to 34 slots. That means that not every parent will be able to see every one of their teachers. And there's a limited time frame that we have. What we've done, and we'll see how it's working out I can share that our conferences, how they're being signed up for is what I would have predicted, in the sense of, so we have a cap right now through the software that a family can only sign up for 2 conferences. And what that is there's some frustration, I'll name that some people say, oh, I wish I could see all 6 teachers. We wanted to make sure that every family had at least an opportunity to see at least one of their teachers. There's some joking that some of our teachers are saying, are they going to come and meet with me and ask about how things are going in math? But I will say what we're seeing from a trend, I was texting with Jeff earlier today, math teachers, almost all their slots are full.
Yeah.
That's what we would have anticipated.
I signed up for first.
Yep. English, pretty close second. And then I would say it's a smattering across the board of the other disciplines. And I would say it's hard to kind of understand what that is. What we'll do is after the first 4 days, open it up to see whatever slots are remaining, people can sign up. And it's hard to predict the why, to be honest. We're also seeing much more 6th than 7th and 8th. I would have predicted that as well. Just thinking that transition from elementary, and hard to know too, fall versus spring. I think we can make some guesses, but hard to know. And we will be taking time. So we did some R&D with our staff. We have a template to go. That 7 minutes will go quickly, but we're really trying to give them a structure to focus in on, 3 things I think about that I, as a parent, I want to know. How's my kid doing? Is there anything they should be doing? And how can we partner? And really looking at that, are there some takeaways that we'll be reflecting with that too, moving forward. So we're really excited about it, and trying to give a structure, but also allow autonomy for teachers to do it as well, looking at that approach. Finally, I just want to touch on how important it is, the school culture and giving kids opportunities that we have not been able to the past few years. Last year we were, to enhance more experiences for kids. Middle school is a time for kids to have real hands-on experiences. They need it. They need to move their bodies and have connections outside of the classroom. So we're thrilled. The Hale field trip went really well. It's the first time we've done it, and very, very positive. I will say 7th grade kids are like, what about us? So we actually are looking to see, this would be a 1 year for the 7th grade, this spring potentially bringing them to Hale. And it will be an annual 6th grade field trip, but knowing that class missed out on it, and it made sense why, but giving them an experience as well. And I'll just shout out to Hale Reservation. They're amazing, accommodating for all of our students. And it's been great to give a nature's classroom type experience, but during the school day in close and proximity. Kids really raved about it. And I'll say the Hale team sent us an email saying, your kids make us look good. So it was a nice compliment about our kids, which we hear a lot when we bring our students places. Some things coming up. One of my favorite, I know it's one of Jeff's favorite, is we'll be continuing our tradition for Veterans Day of having local veterans come and present to our 6th grade students, and then having a luncheon with some of our 6th grade students, which is just so important. Theater is in full effect. It's a healthy program. Shout out to Tracy Allen. So those productions are coming up. Intramurals, and we are happening. I will say our kids, as we know, are pretty involved. We offer intramurals. We don't always get signups. I mean, kids are involved outside in a lot of different things. It doesn't mean, so we do offer, sometimes they don't have signups. And that's just a reality. And I think that has been fewer involvement that we find than we used to. And I think that's just the reality of where kids are more involved outside of school than they were before. Whatever those activities might be. But we want to make sure we are providing, because not every student has those options or wants those options as well. And then interscholastic sports as well. And then student council is happening. Jillian Shaw, it's open to all students every week. Blake Pride Alliance is meeting, and then Matt Morangi is working on, we had a Blake Battles Bias and ADL club before. And this year, one of his goals is to work on a multicultural awareness club that we're really working on, trying to tap into kids. What we find a challenge with middle schoolers is they're middle schoolers. Their attendance might be 1 week and then not show up for 3 weeks. So it's hard to have like a cohesive club, but we also want to recognize that's where middle schoolers are and give them some exposure. And then other things we know we'll do, Hour of Code, and then school spirit and culture is important to us. With that, as with site council, I'm thrilled that Orla is here. So Orla Berry is our science department chair, and she has been a steadfast member of site council, which is wonderful. So I've asked her to share a few things. I'll just say before she shares, a few things that we're looking at as a site council is throughout this year, aligning our school improvement plan with the strategic plan. So part of that is knowing that it was just adopted school improvement plan, we're building off what we had, but we want to make sure it aligns to this. So it'll be more connecting probably realistically formally to year 2 of the strategic plan. And that's something we've been working on. And, you know, thinking about relevant learning experiences for students is something I really want to work with our families about on-site council, and thinking about how can we engage families, which is a challenge. Everyone's so busy. And then from a global picture, Jeff and I have talked about that I think our master schedule needs a healthy look. We've had the structure of our master schedule for a long time. Kids' needs have changed. And it's a complex piece. It would probably be a 2-year process, but that's something we're looking at, of how we can better meet the needs of our kids, give supports. I personally would love to have a 6-period day rather than a 7-period day. I think it's a lot quick. That goes along the short periods. I think that from a teaching perspective, most teachers would want that. Master scheduling is hard, but it's always trade-offs. So that's what we're trying to look at. But, Orla, if you're up for sharing, I'm asking if she's up, but I know she has to say something.
Clearly.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Orla Berry, Science Department Chair. That's really in the way. So I have been on site council, and she was when Nat asked me to come tonight. I looked in our notes doc, and I've been on site council since 2015. Who knew? I simply didn't know it was that long. So why am I on site council? I actually say that pretty much the same thing every year when Nat asks that question on the first meeting. And for me, it's just I'm older, and so I don't necessarily have children that age. And it's a really nice way to meet parents of younger children. Especially, I find it especially interesting to meet parents who this is their first time into the secondary level. First-time parents always have sort of a unique perspective. They ask great questions, you know, and you get to hear their thoughts, concerns, and all the rest of it along the way. I enjoy that because it also gives me a sense of trends that might be changing in terms of what parents are thinking, what they think is important. So it's nice to get sort of a heads up in terms of what's coming forward into the high school as well. And so as that said, we're hopefully going to be working on the master schedule, updating the school improvement plan, because obviously it will align with the new strategic plan. And then personally, or sort of locally, not personally, more locally within the department, we're looking at sort of you know, ensuring that our experiences for our students are really, really relevant. So right now we're looking at making some modifications in the science explorations program in 7th grade and the intro to engineering program in 8th grade. And so that sort of ties in with, in general, this site council view of how we can expand learning opportunities for our students.
You're going to keep the trout?
Oh, the trout.
Okay.
Oh, yes, the trout. Actually, what we're doing is essentially expanding the trout out and doing more with the trout. So the trouts are going nowhere. Yeah, yeah. Judy Silva would not be happy. Retired and all, she is.
We might hear from Judy.
Yeah, I think we might hear from Judy. Yeah.
Excellent. I don't know if there are any questions.
I have one.
Okay.
I was going to wait and see if there's any.
I have a couple, and sorry about the feedback. I have a poor sound set up here at home, so I apologize. Nat, can you tell me a little bit? I'll get all my questions out so that I can shut off, you know, my sickness and this odd way of communicating. So first off, could you give us an example of the student portfolios? Because I'm really passionate about the portfolio side. Could you, is there a possibility of giving back some of the analytics about the conferences after the fact? Like, how many went to which, you seem like you're already dialed in on the, which subject areas are being heavily hit. And could that be remedied by a stronger homeschool connection to perhaps another platform of some sort? And then, is there a possibility of a survey about outside activities? You do offer the intramurals, and they're great. But there was even my own middle schooler, he didn't really want to participate this year, and I was curious why he's not doing other things. I didn't know if there was something, another lens we could put on that. So, but those are the 3 questions I had, and I will be quiet.
Sure. So in order, student portfolio. So the example that I mentioned earlier with math is really using the Google Suite and the Google platform and what the 8th grade math teachers have been working on. I know other disciplines have, but I would say they're further along in formalizing it is using Google Slides as a way of really capturing and then having a Google folder where one piece, a real goal that we're working on with aligns with the state frameworks and I would say nationally with math and internationally is bringing more visuals into the math. Math is no longer taught, nor should it be, just in rote ways, and really tapping into all students' needs and really making a lot of animation slides for how the kids are teaching it so that they are also using that. So it's archiving their work and then tying into some of the feedback they are doing through their assessments can be tied into those slides as well. It's something too that, you know, I'm just saying this now, if there was a time, would love to have some students and teachers share, you know, and maybe this would be a forum to kind of share some things that we're thinking.
I would be interested in saying that because it's when I gravitate to an artifact or something that to move forward, and that is probably the last subject area I would go to. So that's why I asked. Yeah, I would love to see some sort of examples of something in a portfolio factor because portfolios are, you know, something that students bring with them moving forward so they can reflect on that, on their thinking and the thinking made visible that they can reflect on and build on as they move through academia, even beyond Medfield is a big deal. So yeah, I'd love to explore that more, just to understand it better, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. From the analytics, you're right. I think from both a piece of, you know, it's clear to get that data where it is. You know, I agree about the ideas of how can we remedy what that need is. My gut response is, and this is, I think, has been true for a long time, the number one concern of most parents is math. And I would say also the reality too is what are the two subject areas that are consistently in CAS tests? Math and English. Those are the roads. I will also say a lot of math now is reading comprehension. And that ties in with English language arts, but absolutely, I'm happy to share what that breakdown is. And then as far as the outside activities, that's something that we're constantly working on. One of the interim check-ins, we always question to ask of kids is, what activities would you like to be a part of? And what can we offer? So trying to meet those different needs. So I hope that answers your questions, Leo. I don't know if anyone else.
Thank you for that very much.
No worries.
Yeah, I would just add, I think we mentioned it, but we split up like the PTOs by school, and I get the pleasure of working with the middle school and the PTO. If anyone has any ideas or kids have needs, they are working to like what other intramurals, what do our kids want? How can we get middle school kids to show up there without just having free pizza there? But they're working hard to try and find more events to build our school community.
And we know, I mean, the reality is it is, and we adore them. We love working with them. It's different living with middle schoolers than it is working with them. I'll say that having had 3, but the reality is too, it's a balance too, because families want to help support, but their kids really don't want their parents around. And that's very age appropriate. So what does that look like? It's, you know, it's a hard balance. And sometimes over involvement is good because it provides structure, but it's trying to how to meet those needs too. But it's definitely something we're working on. And I would just echo that the PTO has been wonderful about trying to partner.
I had 2 follow-ups. One staying on the survey and outside activities. One interesting one, and you don't have to answer it. It's kind of like, what are the activities that are preventing them?
Yeah.
You know, that's an interesting one, and that might be one where even the panorama survey results, because it would be kind of interesting to say, what are the students saying versus what are the parents saying? And
So you can always add questions to that. So we're looking at doing that in February this year, so we can add questions to that, that look at outside activities to see if there's any impediments for participating during the school day.
yeah, and it's a different way. It's not so much what do you want. When you say why don't you, it's going to be time, commitments, and you say great.
That's absolutely right.
What are you, you know, what's taking up that?
That's right.
And is it something, you know, like I'd be curious too.
And I also, I'm remiss, also, I meant to mention earlier, the late bus has been great because that has been sometimes an inhibitor for students. So we do have the late bus. Yes, it's a little bit later because of the busing reality. That said, it's nice that that's no longer a piece that we couldn't have, that we do provide for some kids that are staying after. Supervision can be a challenge, just reality. But having the late bus has been wonderful, and I really appreciate that fact that it's there. It may not every day, but for those that need it, they need it. So that's been great.
The only other one too, you said more staff is asking for more professional development. In what areas do you hear?
I would say truly, the two that come to mind right away, one is around culturally responsive practices, saying, I believe, and I can't speak for all, but pretty close to saying that. I think the belief system and understanding of the why is there. Really understanding and meeting kids, but okay, how do I do that?
It's the execution.
Absolutely. And how do I reality do that? The theory sounds wonderful. And that's true of a lot of these initiatives. Okay, I'm in. I get it. Our students are different. We need to tap into them and they're more diverse. And we also have, a lot of diverse learning. We know a lot more now. I think that's the other piece. It's not that our students have changed necessarily, but we know more. That our assessment, our practices, how we're instructing was not meeting the needs of all kids. And now we know more about the brain. So it's like, okay, that makes sense. How do we do that? A good practical example is when we had Sarah Ward come and do professional development around executive functioning for our staff. She was able to give strategies that teachers could implement that next day. And I think that's where our teachers are at, is like the in the moment strategy to say, okay, that sounds great. I got to adapt my curriculum over the next 3 months. But what can I do tomorrow? What's a strategy of how I greet kids? What's a strategy that when I'm asking a question, what's a more way that may represent all kids where they're coming from? And I think that's the kind of real concrete strategy tying with that 10 that I think ties into it, in addition to culturally responsive practices, is differentiating for different needs of different learners. We do have heterogeneous classes at middle school, which I will, at the end of the day, say is the right thing. I also know it's hard. We don't want to pigeonhole kids in to say, these are the kids that should be in this high level class when they're 12 years old. Because although we say they're not tracked, it's hard not to be in that trajectory. And that's something that's a reality that we know we have to get more concrete strategies for teachers. So, and again, the belief system's there. I think that's a constant piece too. And sometimes just how do we address and meet kids with their behaviors, and really understand that this may be their profile. And we can't just say, you know what, you're out of class. Like send them out to the hall. That's not going to help. What can we do to help strategize? And are there structures we can put in place that can maybe minimize that going on? As you know, I could talk all day.
That's a great update. I mean, I'm not sure if there's anything else. I appreciate it. And welcome, Molly. This is the fun part of the meetings too.
Sorry.
No, thank you.
All right.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thanks,
You bet.
Matt.
Thanks so much.
Great feedback.
Thank you, Nat.
And yeah, I think we were gonna, just based on having you folks here, and again, everyone's welcome to stay. Especially Robert, it's your school here. But yeah, we're gonna move the cell phone usage, faculty and student feedback up in the agenda while you guys are here.
So can we just go over some of the data?
Yeah,
Okay.
I started looking at it, but yeah, I'd love to just open it up.
So as we talked about our last meeting, I mentioned that I would gather some information for both staff and from students on the cell phone usage for this year, and just trying to get a sense of where people are at and what the managing of cell phones, how it's impacted students, how it's impacting teaching, et cetera. So we'll start with the staff one. I obviously asked what department they were in, just to kind of get a sense if it was working better in some departments versus others. But I think the meat of it is the questions that follow that. What is your practice of managing all cell phones, managing cell phones? And you see that 86%, almost 87% of our teachers have adopted the cell phone caddy that Robert had mentioned in his remarks. And then 18.3% of their 11 teachers had students put them away in bags. And then there's only 5 teachers that said students were allowed to use, and we have a lot of 7 singletons in there that have different methods, but many of them fall into one of the top 3. They just clarified a little bit. So that was really good to see that, we have lots of teachers that are trying out what they had talked about last year as a staff and implementing them and getting a sense of how it works or not. The next question was, do you feel your approach to cell phone management is effective? You'll see that 83% of teachers said yes, 16%, 7% said no. Again, that's a pretty high number of teachers that feel their management of cell phones is effective. I think if we had done this a couple of years ago, you wouldn't have come even close to that number. So that's really good. And then we talked about, in this group, how some folks use it as part of their curriculum in class. We wanted to get a sense of what that would look like. So again, with 60 responses, how often do your students use cell phones as part of your curriculum? Only 7 teachers said daily, 5 teachers said weekly, 26 teachers a few times a month, and 24 teachers, or 40%, said never. So that gave us a really good snapshot of whether or not that's an issue or not to be something we should talk about. And then ask them to just write anything else that they thought would be helpful, you know, as we go through this topic, and any other feedback that didn't or wasn't covered in the survey. So I just, you know, there's a few of them in there, but I see some of the themes that came out. If you would code some of this data, I started using the Caddy this year. I love it. We've gone to this method with the Caddy this school year, and the classroom environment in CAPS is so much better. Use of the Caddy for the whole department has been a game changer. Cell phone caddies have been game changers in the classroom. So I think people are fairly positive of how it's working. And again, this is from the teacher point of view, because as you saw from the data, kids not so much. They don't love that. They don't love it at all. So, you know, you can see all the information here. I think it was really good to get this.
Leo?
Sorry, I was checking. Sorry.
Okay, okay.
So, again, so what and I agree with you, Jeff. I think what I'm hearing from the data is that the Caddy help assists in some of the management for teachers, and that's what I expected. I don't think that, you know, school committee needs to, you know, deliver an edict about cell phones. I think it's just about supporting the policies and teachers in the management. So I think that's what looks like that's what we're accomplishing, unless you disagree.
No, I mean, I can go through some of the other information too before we have a conversation, or you want to talk about it now, whatever you'd like to do, Tim.
No, I'd say, yeah, keep going.
Okay.
It's kind of, because I think it might be worthwhile to get the students and the teachers
Sure.
a comprehensive.
I apologize. I'm having difficulty reading the room, but that's on me. I apologize.
Okay. For my short time here, I think MHS does a good job balancing student phone use with expectation they should put it away or in a caddy during instructional time, unless it's used for instruction. So there's lots of really good feedback in there from teachers and their perspective. Again, folks that are using it day to day in the trenches and what they think is going on. When you look at the student one, we had 275 responses from the students, with the majority of those 104 being seniors. And they've got some really good feedback and some good points, especially seniors who are, in many cases, 18 years old and say we're going to college next year. We have to put our phone in the caddy for. Fair point. So what grade are you in? 275 responses, 57 ninth grade, 53 10th grade, 66 11th, 104 12th. Have you noticed a difference with the management and cell phones this year? 76% or 209 said yes, 26 said no, and then we had 48 students that did not attend Medfield High School last year. So either students that were in 8th grade last year or folks that moved in. How many of your classes do teachers collect phones or ask you to put them away? Majority there was either 5 or 6 or all. You'll see 120 kids said 5 or 6 classes, and 103 said all. So when you add those together, you know, it's over 70% of our students feel like that happens in their classroom. Do you feel not having a cell phone in class allows you to focus more on your schoolwork? 73.7% no. 26.3 yes.
It's actually interesting that 26% held
was
up their
higher than I
hand and
thought.
said,
It's higher than I thought it was gonna
I'm
be.
surprised.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that if it's 26%, that means it's working, right? I think you can make that inference that if kids feel that way. It was a lot higher than I thought. I thought we might get 5 to 10% of kids saying that, but it was a little bit higher. And I just think that, you know, they were really thoughtful in some of their responses. You know, you have some that kind of no feedback, but I think a lot of it that you see mirrors what you see in the news about parents, especially, and students that don't want their cell phones taken away. And again, this is something where you see in the news where some districts are locking up the cell phones and kids have to put it by a device to unlock it. This isn't what we're doing, right? Kids they walk out of the classroom, they have their cell phone with them in the hallway. They just put it in the caddy when they walk in. So nothing's locked away, so the kids can always access it if they need to. But you start to see some of the concerns that we see in the media and that folks have, where in case of an emergency, I don't have my phone on me right away. My parents want to reach out to me. They can't during class. They don't get it till the end of class. So those kinds of things, I think, are real life. That's the world we live in right now. I do think that you see a lot of the seniors say things like, this is great for freshmen and sophomore, but if you haven't figured it out as an upperclassman, then you need to, it's on you. There's some natural consequences responses in here where if you're not paying attention, it's on you, as a 17 or 18-year-old kid, which I thought was interesting from them. These are kids that drive to school every day, and they have a lot of responsibility, and they have their phones on them when they're driving, yet we're taking them away from them in the classroom. So fair point from our students. I don't know if you got a chance to read all of the data, but there's a lot of feedback. I think out of the 270, maybe 106 maybe provided written feedback.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
Something like that. So I thought there were some really good responses.
Yeah,
from
what do you
kids
think,
and
Molly?
thoughtful.
Since we have Molly, you're a senior
Yeah, no,
now,
I'm a
right?
senior.
So, like, it must be like there's a lot of like I'm 18, and
Yeah.
it must be a shot after
Yeah.
like 3 years of being here to now have it. Do you have any feedback for you or your friends on like what it's like?
I think it's definitely been a lot better, like realistically, like in class not having them. But I heard you say that like you were allowed to have them in the hallway.
Mhm.
That's like not always true. Like some teachers do make you leave them in class.
Mhm.
So if like maybe we could like reinforce the fact that like we can have them in the hallway, because that is actually a lot of people's main concern, which like, is kind of sad. But if something were to happen and you were alone, like that's really scary. So I know that that's a big concern for some people.
There was a lot in bathrooms too, because you use that sign
Yeah.
out with your phone.
So some teachers let you bring it with them, like bring it with you to the bathroom, but some make you leave it like on the table. But overall, like I feel like we all like it's like I understand why they're making us put it in the caddy, but at the same time, like when we're going in the hallway or something. But also, I feel like it is different between grades. Like if you're an upperclassman and you really haven't figured it out, like I don't know, it is kind of on you.
Yeah. Interesting feedback, like it just makes people want to use their phones more, so they'll go for long walks in school, they'll go to the
Yeah.
bathroom and they'll just kind of walk around, use their phone according to this student. I'm 18, I don't need someone controlling my phone, so kind of that's a theme that comes out, especially with, kids your age
Yeah.
that are, they've had phones for a long time and they drive a car to school, but they have a phone on them, so. Great feedback. I think it was definitely worthwhile gathering all this data to see. I don't think the results were super surprising in terms of the difference between teachers and students, but good data to have.
I think it's interesting. So this is the first time we're doing something like this, right? So the freshman experience is going to be very different than your senior experience. I think if we surveyed the students next year, it would be interesting to see if the freshmen who only know caddies would be as resistant as sophomores than maybe some of the, the sophomores or the juniors are right now. Yeah, so when I was reading that.
Oh, sorry, Michelle.
No, you're okay. Go ahead.
I was wondering if maybe we survey them in the springtime as well. I wonder what the feedback might be.
Yeah, the things I would say, because I was, in a classroom for a long time and dealing with this, I'm like, there's a lot of the bathroom stuff, like, and I'm just not here for that. Like the cell phone turns the bathroom from 5 minutes to 20 minutes. And it does if you're an adult or a kid, and it's worse if you're a kid. So like reading the kids' stuff, I appreciate the kids participating. But being in a high school for 10 years, there's a lot of stuff in there that, they're not mature enough yet to make this decision. And I'll just say it like that. And I did want to point out, there were 2 teacher comments on here that I just want to point out, and and you're still here, Rob, but there's one that said, since different classes have different rules, the inconsistency is confusing to students and makes having strict cell phone rules harder to enforce. So the caddies are there, but it's like the teacher's option to use it. And I know that's hard. And I know that's confusing to kids. Like, so I don't have an answer, but I just want to note, those 16% of teachers, it's still a large percentage that's still like trying to figure this out, and it's hard. Like we've mentioned a couple of things already. The transition from 8th to 9th is hard, but I just want to kind of name that. And then one that said, I'd prefer a no cell phone policy across the board that comes from the top, because that's where I think this conversation started. Like, what can we do sitting here to help our administrators and really our teachers? So there was some stuff on the other side that I wanted to just bring up there that it's a struggle. There's no easy way. But I think the data, I don't know how to say this to a bunch of kids that I don't know, but I appreciate all the feedback and all that. But of the 170 written responses, a lot of them were like, I feel like I should be able to use it when I go to the bathroom. And like, that's the problem. That turns the bathroom into the bathroom to 20 minutes and finding your friends and all that. So I don't know. I appreciate the student feedback, but a lot of it was reading some of it. You're like, this is what an addict would say. That's someone who's addicted to these phones. But anyway, so I think it's awesome. I think 26 kids. I think a lot of other kids probably haven't admitted or realized. So we got 26 to say like, yes, this is way better. I'm not tempted by my phone. And there are more out there that aren't saying it. So I applaud you for the effort. And who was that? Was that PTA money or someone that got the caddies?
Yeah, how are the caddies funded?
How did we fund them?
Okay.
Through the high, okay. Well,
Okay.
I applaud you for it, and I think we're trending in the right direction. And just anything we can do to help, let us know.
Yeah, even before I had a couple questions on the data, but Robert, if you can speak to, I'm impressed that we have everybody agreeing to use them. Like, or you know, that sounds like was new compared to last year. I know some chose to, but how is that process, you know, working with your staff, and what degree is this?
Science teachers last year saw some good results from it, so we just shared some of the shared. I think the number, which is pretty accurate, 1% or something like that of teachers that are using them. The others that aren't are like Orla, they use them, right? You know, there was, I think, sort of teachers that regularly, so they don't use them. It's not an issue. It's fine. For a lot of the other classes that don't use them at all. So, but yeah, I mean, for the most part, people buy it.
Yeah, I was actually the survey results too. I thought the staff were more favorable than I expected, which was, I think, was positive, and the students were more negative. I guess I should have.
Dr. Jeff Point had begun the survey 2 years ago. Didn't have the staff results.
Yeah, you could see in the comments, some of the students, you know, maybe it's, hey, let's make sure they know how we feel, which I'll give
Especially
them,
seniors.
give them credit for intelligence. No, I'm not sure. Actually, other comments on it?
No, I think just, you know, as you said, that where this stemmed was whether or not we felt that there was anything at a school committee level that needed to be done. And I think at least what I'm hearing is between what's already documented in our policies coupled with the actions that are being taken at the school level, there is no additional action being asked of the school committee at this time as it relates to this topic. Is that fair?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the school committee, this came up for those that weren't there as part of the workshop. And I think the school committee was asking for some, you know, some research, and to be honest, there's different schools of thought on it, but I think the best possible outcome is something along these lines. I mean, this is I think the survey is fantastic. It's something I think would be really valuable each year if it doesn't take too much time. And yeah, I wish you could almost mine the comments. I'm sure Leo, between us, you could, you know, to be able to synthesize and say, hey, what are they really? You can read them, but that's just harder for comparison. But I think it's great information, and it's consistent too with a lot of that research. The students, I think it takes them a little while to say this is better. It's natural. Nat, are you? You know, how is it in the middle school? Like when my oldest was, you know, it was kind of like going from the middle school where it's incredibly contained, you know, at the time due to lockers, which I know is, you know, you may not see, to, and Robert, please don't take it incorrectly, what, you know, could be called the Wild Wild West, meaning like they didn't have the rule, right, and the consistency. So that's just a term I hear sometimes around governance. Is it still as contained?
Yeah, I mean, So I would say from a policy perspective, rules that Jeff and I have talked about, the reality of the rules wouldn't change. Our rules are kids should not be on their phone, and they should not be at all times. Are there kids that are sneaking texting during the day? Probably, but that's not the expectation. And the rules are, kids do not need their phones during the school day at all. They shouldn't be out. The locker piece, kids have the option of using their lockers or not. And that was a change that happened with the pandemic, that when we had the kids weren't using it for safety and proximity. And yes, we have some teachers who have different views on that. Some wish the kids use their lockers. For some kids, it's a lot easier to carry their bag around because it's in their bag. Whereas before, it's in the locker, and then trying to find it. So 6th grade is starting off using lockers, but as far as the phones, we basically said it should be in your bag or locked in your locker. Are some kids have it on their person? They might. We're not checking their person. We shouldn't be seeing it. So if a kid has their phone out, what we say to kids, if you need to text your parents, if you need to do that, ask an adult for permission. And that's okay. And I think that's a healthy way to kind of teach kids. Also, they can use one of the phones in school. We also recognize, and I would be lying if I hadn't done the same thing, my own children, parents text their kids during the school day. They do. We can't stop that. We can ask them not to, but also some parents might be texting them thinking they'll get the text right at 2:10 when school's out. That's just a reality that has changed and that we know. But we tell parents, if you need to get in touch with your kid, you should be calling the school. We can get that message on. We've also, to the same point about some of these rules are only as good as the least enforced classroom. Because that does start to, this is the high school staff too. It can be a frustration point if one teacher is allowing kids to use their phones the last 5 minutes of class, and the other teachers are not. Or learning advisory. We ran into this with iPads and gaming on Chromebooks, allowing them to use games the rules weren't. I love our staff, but I also know there's some autonomy that happens. That's a big piece that we talk a lot with our staff. We need to kind of talk to each other about that and be consistent. And to do that. So I think we've also been much more concerted with expectations from the get-go day one, saying we should not be seeing any of the earbuds in the hallway. A lot of kids try to sneak them in and listen to their music throughout all. They don't need. They don't need. One piece that we run into with kids is some teachers will say it's okay to listen to their music while you're doing this. You can listen to music through the phone. You don't need your phone. And that's a reality. Is knowing that piece. So I would say, I think our staff is not, we had more issues, I would say, last year than we did this year. And part of that is we've been much more direct from day one in saying to teachers, we need to be very consistent on this. But that exceptions to these rules, the overnight DC trip, kids have their phones during the day to use it. That's a different piece. That's really safety. Things like that. On our day-to-day field trips, they don't.
Can I piggyback a question real quick? What about the use of, AirPods or earpods, during the school day or even in class? Are you seeing that?
Yeah.
And I guess, and I'll piggyback, yes, they have the affects the parents. I think with the wearables, like an Apple Watch or some other Android watch, they can do the same communications with folks. I will say that my child in your building has that capability. We do not abuse that situation. But at the same time, are we seeing that in the middle or high school where kids are wearing earpods or some sort of earbuds during class, listening to music?
Yeah. So I would say some of it is for instructional purposes. I mean, when they're watching videos and they're doing things, and the more we differentiate, there may be options of watching 3 different videos, what they're looking at, so they have that. That's an expectation that we have for kids. You'll have kids can wear hats, kids with long hair, they're hiding their buds. That's something that we expect. I would call them out on it, and remind them to put it away. If it becomes a problem with a certain kid, the phone does get turned in, and then we have to the end of the day in the office. And we do that. Teachers shouldn't be taking phones from kids. That becomes more of an office support.
Robert, I apologize for the wild, wild west. It was really said for effect.
You know, the reality is we did have, what we have in our handbook, meaning, from that point, some of what we have in your handbook for things like this are. So, I just think we just made it conservative. Now, and the reality is we've just seen uptick in students during the day. The reality that we all know, the elephant in the room is that we have a access, we have the same access to all of these things that we can do so, right? So, right, we do everything else.
Yeah,
Right there.
it's true.
So we know that as well, and the kids know that. But it's still good that the awareness is there. In many ways, the caddies do, I think, is a sort of a tangible reminder that these are the expectations.
I think, I remember in this room. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just saying with anything, you know, they're
Resourceful they're resourceful teenagers.
Sure.
One thing I will add too is something we talk a lot about with our staff too, is we have to be mindful of that, how we're using our phones as well during the day. I mean, that is something that has changed over the last 4 years of texting each other during the day. We have to be mindful. And there are reasons. There are times I'm in the middle of class, my phone rings, Jeff might call me, I'm in the middle of the class. We have to work on modeling and saying, you know what, this is what's going on, this is why I'm using my phone. That's something we talk about during staff meetings and team meetings and department chair meetings. We are much more accessible than we used to be. So those are norms for the adults too working as well. So it's a constant thing. And kids will call, they're the first to call us.
Sure they are.
No, it's great. I was gonna say, and that, Robert, when we did that through SEL, I remember that was almost a 2-year. The enforcement was probably the biggest thing that I think it was appropriate that it also wasn't as widespread, but that was the bigger ask. And you're just looking at the survey, it seems like that's such a critical element is.
And prior to this, I was going from, money from, prior to years ago. So, you know, again, it wasn't really something that was allowed across the board, but certainly it was. I think that's where one of that. Somebody said earlier, you go from one class, not last, you go to the next class, they are. Consistency.
One thing I share with Jeff is something that came up too. We also have to be aware that not every kid has a phone. So that's a real piece. I would say for different reasons, there's equity, access points, but there's also families that are trying to fight the trend and hold off on getting their middle schooler a phone. That's a hard battle to hold on to. We had a situation where phenomenal teacher, the kids were working on an opening year project, and they said, "Oh, can we upload pictures of ourselves? I have one on my phone. Can we use that?" Yeah. One of the kids felt very outed that he was one of the few in that 6th grade class that did not have a phone. That became a real tension point for the family that night. And it was a good reminder to say, you know what, this is another reason why we really shouldn't be making it part of our norm. If kids want to do that, they can do that at home. They can also upload to different things. So there's another angle on it that we really haven't thought of thinking in that way. You know, we're evolving and learning too.
That's great. Thank you. I mean, I think, no, thank you so much. Okay, I think we'll go back to new business and the FY25 budget calendar.
So in your materials, you have the draft calendar that, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
The draft calendar that Michael has put together with the dates and the actions that are in there. We did change the date a little bit because of the warrant committee moving up their process a little bit. But happy to answer any questions, or Michael answer any questions about it. And again, it's draft form, so if you want to do any updates or changes, we can absolutely do that.
So 2 things. Do we, we didn't do this last meeting, but I think we said we have to officially vote. So even though I'm technically the financial secretary, we have to vote to make me the person working on the budget process. Did I miss? I think that's a necessary step, or no? We just say it.
So I think you guys have always voted a budget liaison
Okay.
the last few years, so wherever you folks want to do that.
Okay. Do you want to do that tonight?
Yes.
Thank
Hold on, I was gonna ask another question too. Overall, I'm trying to, let me focus on that. Hold on. The cold is recovering. Yeah, liaison, what do we do? 'Cause for a little while, at one point, we had two folks joining the meetings for a while. So then we had liaison. I think it became natural as the finance individual, the person over finance
Right, that makes sense.
was also called in. And I think then so yeah, and I forget whether we voted or not.
We did, it was an official agenda item, but we didn't end up doing it until later in the process.
Yeah, that was,
It's when we started to meet more with the warrant committee to look at specifically what the budget was that we had in front of us and meeting with them to understand where the changes were gonna need to be made.
If it's understood that Kristen's gonna do that, she can just be a part of it, and I prefer that you guys would vote if it's on the agenda, say November, one of
Right.
November meetings. You know, just so it's explicitly there, but if you can have consensus that she will do that, and if we have anything between now and November, then we would include Kristen in that, but.
Yeah, because
would
I
prefer
think there's
to have it-
opportunities to be in earlier
Right,
conversations.
I would prefer if, you know, based on, you know, past occurrences of things that have been voted on that aren't listed on the agenda,
Correct.
that we put it on the agenda in November and then vote it. So we-
yeah, I don't.
If it's not on the agenda, it gets a little sticky.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan
But
of.
at the same time, Christian, you feel free to, attend those meetings. I mean, you have every right to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's, I feel the same way. I'm not a big advocate of adding
And
them.
actually, any of us have every right to, as community members and members of the school committee. So I think it's a formality, but that we should not vote it unless it's on the agenda, really.
No, I was almost under the assumption, I think I noticed it a little while ago, but that, yeah, whoever's sitting in it, I think the only time we may think about it, and I'm always thinking about long-term process and sustainability, is if we vote in a new finance officer, secretary in March or April, and they may not be the liaison, because that's right when we're at the end.
Right before town
Right,
meeting, right.
so that's why I think that there's a little bit of the experience that the former secretary has, keeps us out there. As far as a vote, I would just rather hold it. I think November
What is the
2nd.
purpose of voting a liaison? If we just appoint one? I mean.
Yeah, that's,
what is the-
I don't know.
There's no voting capacity, warrant, there's no, like I said, I'm not sure if I'm not sure if it's even necessary. I mean,
Maybe we should probably look back to see what we voted in the past on, if you guys voted in the past on that.
Yeah, I'm receptive to voting on it in November. If we don't have to, I'd rather not. Right, the only reason I would is if, all of us were buying that, be that individual, then you would vote, right?
Yeah.
So that, for the right reasons.
I think we should
But,
look at what the process was.
But yeah, to me, it's, I would, Kristen, I would assume that's the expectation that you're part of it, provided you're willing. And why don't we'll check on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay.
Assume, if we need to vote, we can vote on it.
Right.
But again, I agree with Leo brings up actually something that'll be reinforced on goals too, but if we don't have to vote, let's not.
What are the roles of the financial liaison? Is this for like the community? So Kristen's like the point person on this, or is it, because anyone can attend the meetings, right? So what is the?
So it's when, if Michael and I are meeting with the liaison from warrant committee or the chair of the warrant committee, and we have meetings on that, then Kristen would attend those meetings
Okay,
and and be your liaison there to those conversations. Yeah.
okay.
and then report
And that's the
back.
finance, and that's the finance person. I mean, she would expect it to be there anyway.
Right.
So I think that's, yeah. But if we want to make it official to vote, that's fine. I think
Yeah,
we're a
just-
small
I would
cozy
just urge
group.
you
I
guys to
mean,
just do what you've done in the past. So just look
that's
at-
Jeff's point person. She's our finance person to report back to the school committee. And so I think that's completely fine. I mean, that expectation that Jeff has Kristen to go to as that point person.
Yeah, no, in my recollection, more than anything else, just like, whoever's on SBC during the meetings, we ask what's going
Yeah,
on.
sure.
As budget
Right.
gets a
No, I
little
got you. I
hotter,
got you.
Yeah,
what's going on.
yeah,
So,
for sure.
So Kristen is that person.
and I just want to check, because there was a couple points in the public comment that
So would you folks be willing to vote on this draft as is, or
the draft for
for the budget calendar?
yeah, one sec. Yeah, we hit on the liaison, and then I think the only other question before voting on the draft was the 11th and the 25th. Yeah, I think what we talked about in the workshop about holding the public hearing earlier.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, January 11th, I got it, okay.
Do we have a meeting that night? Is that why that's on? I don't have that on my calendar.
The school
It just says
committee
school committee continues to review, so that's not.
That's a meeting night, yeah.
It is a meeting night?
Yes.
Okay. I must have missed that one.
So I think the debate was, because we talked about it, and I think Kristen,
Oh, January 8th is the meeting? Okay, it's January 8th.
There it is. Yeah, I see it.
January 8th.
Okay.
so I guess the topic was, do you hold the public hearing earlier in the year, meaning earlier in the month of January? You vote later in the month of January, and I think the downside is the budgeting cycle. So is the budgeting cycle in a good place that you can actually,
Well, if it's being
Do that.
prepared for
I
the
think I was
school, if it's being prepared for the
Sorry.
school committee to be reviewed, which means it's now publicly available, right? So I think that the schedule of everything leading up to it is not what we would ask to change, but rather just push the public hearing component to the meeting on the 8th, so that when we come back on the 25th with a vote, it is inclusive of any of the feedback that perhaps we heard or things that we want to emphasize. I'm not suggesting it changes it dramatically one way or the other. I think it's just, to ensure that, if the public hearing component is able to be processed.
So we'll need to revise the whole calendar if that's the case.
I was gonna ask Michael if
I just want to
moving
remind,
that up,
I
yeah,
just
what is
remind
the
the committee
impact?
that it's that public hearings. I know you guys haven't been through it yet, but that public hearing piece is the district superintendent, the budget, director of finance, and the teachers. It's their budget bringing to you at that point. So when you're not voting on your budget, it's our budget we put together. Then it becomes your budget after you vote.
But we're submitting it to the selectmen and the warrant committee by the end of January.
Correct, but it changes,
You still work on it for
15
the
times
next-
during that before town
Before
meeting.
town meeting.
So if we push the public hearing on the 25th, you're gonna have to add a school committee meeting between December 14th and 30th. We have to add another school committee meeting.
Why can't we just do the hearing on the 8th?
We just, let's rewind, okay, because
You can, it's just, we gotta back everything up.
It's-
'cause
yeah,
that's almost, it's 2 weeks of
so actually,
conversation and
Michael,
development.
maybe walk us through the process
Sure, yeah.
as to what needs to be done to prepare for that. 'Cause
Sure.
Here's
So-
I'll say it right now. My concern for moving that public hearing from the 25th to the 8th is, does the administration have the time they need to make sure that reflects what their needs are? So that's going into it is my concern. It's and then I counter that with us having all the information we need to vote and the public being able to consume it. But I just, if we want to move it earlier, why would it be the 8th? Maybe we hold 2 meetings, move it 1 week earlier, not
So
3 weeks.
we have to provide the budget to the town manager 90 days prior to town meeting. So that's how we start the process, right? So, and then we work backwards. So I can tell you what we're doing currently we're reviewing all our contracts. We're looking at all our contracts. We might have to write bids for like regular transportation. We're going and soliciting some, contracts right now. Most of these contracts don't come in till sometime in November, because vendors have a hard time quoting a year ahead because they don't know, for instance, special education transportation, right? We go through a few different vendors because, the vendor that we currently have is now having difficulties getting drivers, getting vans, so now we have to sub out to another company. And then there comes gas escalation, right? So we go out now, the gas escalation is going to be high, so we're going to be paying more premium for the same transportation. So we try to coordinate all those contracts at a specific time period. There's a lot of contractors, again, they'll give you a quote now, but they're gonna jack it up, right? We also look at, where the state is for revenues and where the town is for revenues, right? So we look at the work committee schedule, and we try to take the schedule that we have and fit it in within that work committee schedule, right? Trying to meet the deadline at the back end and trying to meet the deadline at the beginning. So it's taking the whole process of trying to squeeze it in, right? Knowing that we have to present something to the school committee, right? Because it's going to be the superintendent's budget to the school committee, and then the school committee has from January 30th all the way to May to revise their budget according to what the numbers come out from the state, federal government, and the town. Does that make sense? So you can, if you want, and just like the superintendent said, you want to push the public hearing to January 11th, you're going to have to add another school committee. We're going to have to push the agenda up. And I don't know if we're going to have time to meet with every single department chair because we have to squeeze all those in. Today is October 12th, which, right now we have those meetings happening November 1st because they're gathering their information and getting that available for us. So that's going to squeeze that by 2 weeks on that top end. So we would have, next week, we would have to start those department chair meetings, which gives them less time, right? The way we like to do the budget is at zero-based budgeting, which is not adding a 4% or 3% to your current budget. It's what are your needs? What are you planning for? I'm going to give you an example. The science department, if they're looking for new textbooks, they have to go out, they have to get 3 quotes for us. They have to tell us, what the 3 quotes are. They have to present those 3 quotes. We have to look at it. We have to, they have to meet with their teachers to see what type of curriculum they want to, input. So there's a lot of that information that's happening currently. So if we're going to squeeze them, we're not going to have that accuracy in that budget as we're moving forward. Anything can be.
Anything we done, we can do it. I mean, we can do it. It's just, it's not going to be.
I'm not going to say.
I guess from my perspective, I'm just wondering what is broken in the process.
Yeah, what's the value add from moving this? Why
what's
are we
broken?
asking
Like,
to
why are we
move
doing
this?
That we hear from the public before we vote, but I learned this a couple months ago. We talked about this because the vote,
What
we
is
just
the
like
vote?
take over the thing, and that
It
I
just,
learned
it
that
just
last
moves
time.
the budget from Jeff to us officially. So that's when we officially own the budget, and then we own the budget from there into the town meeting. And we can continue to make changes or updates, and that's when you're going to be meeting with the warrant committee as the financial liaison to look at what the things are that the town's coming back with and saying maybe you have to cut X amount from your budget in order to be able to get this to pass. And that's when you start doing those pieces.
And then
We can also continue to hear the public from now until that date. Just because that's the open meeting doesn't mean they can't come talk to us any other time. What this looks like right now is it allows the departments that we work with and we support to make sure they can be able to get their asks in so we understand what we're looking at when we get to that January 25th meeting.
On
And more
paper,
importantly, I gotta say as well, when it comes, the biggest list is the cut list, right? So when Jeff and Michael, after we vote the budget of our ask, goes back to the town, and then we have to work backwards and say, okay, what what is the big items that they have to prioritize for us? We're gonna go ask them to prioritize, what is the list that we can live without and can't live without, and that's on us to decide based on that.
Okay, can I
And-
just,
and
sorry.
Yeah, no, no, I just
Michael.
want to add that the warrant committee on the 10th has already, if you look at the preliminary calendar, they're saying that we're going to get 4%. So knowing that
We
we're
have
going to get 4% of what we have, 80% of our budget is payroll. Right? So we're looking, right now, we're trying to gather information from teachers, right? Who's going to be moving next year? With, steps, right?
Steps and
So
lanes,
you got
their
steps and
salary,
lanes.
yeah.
So we're gathering all those teachers' information saying, okay, are you expecting to move next year? And if you are expecting to move next year, then we have to gather all that documentation of how they're gonna move their lane, right, or their step. So that information we're gathering right now. So that payroll, we don't want to be in a situation as other communities are where we're rushing the payroll side of it, because that's what takes a long time, right? The non-payroll side, we can manage that part. The payroll side, it's more involved, right? So, because, and I can go over this with you, I can show you our payroll sheets, I can show you how the 26 weeks looks like, where the movements happen, how the movements happen. All that is being gathered, right? All that information, and we have to give teachers a specific period of time to provide us that information.
So just to be fair, Michael, I'm not advocating for you guys to try to do that process any faster. The way this reads, it made it sound like there was going to be a budget ready for us to review by the middle of December that we were then voting on in January. If this is not the vote to say we accept the budget as is, it's just the vote to say that we take ownership of the budget, I would just appreciate the language to express that, because the whole point, and I didn't mean to strike so many nerves, but the whole point was to say that I don't feel comfortable voting on things that require any kind of, or offer an opportunity for public input in the same session. But what everyone has explained, I appreciate, is that this is not a final budget. This is us taking ownership of the budget. And therefore, that public input still has plenty of time to make its way into our feedback on the budget.
Correct.
That's not clear on this schedule. That's my only
So
point.
let's update that. And
Thank you.
Let's add from February to March 2024, in addition to meetings of the warrant committee, additional opportunities for public input to the school committee.
I would appreciate that. Thank
We
you.
can do that, absolutely do that.
Yeah, it's just, we talked about this, Rob, but yeah, it's just like scary when it says school committee vote, and then 6 days later, it says submission of the budget to the selectmen warrant committee without knowing that, like,
Yeah.
we still change it a lot. It just,
So I forget, I think it was 18 or 19. That budget changed like 9 times between, April, and that was the year town meeting got pushed into the summer.
Correct.
It changed, it continued to change as you're negotiating with the warrant committee. So, yeah, we take effectively ownership of it, and changes are, effectively, that's where the liaison becomes a lot more active.
And to Leo's point
But-
too, I'm sorry.
But that's,
I think ownership, Tim, I think the term ownership is just, it's just options and feedback, right? The term ownership is a hard term. We own it now. We're still the governing body of the school committee. The budget that's currently in place, we voted and we're still responsible for it. So I guess the term ownership is, and maybe that's what's the scary term here about what we're voting on. What we're voting on is the first proposed budget for Jeff to go to the town with and start working on the actual numbers. The real business, the real work gets done by Christine and Jeff and Michael and all the finance people to try to meet our contractual obligations that Michael's talking to. And, Will, you've been a teacher, you want to step in a lane, and every year you move a step in a lane, right? Or you may move a lane, or you may move a step, right? right? And those are contractual obligations that we have. If we can't meet certain factors of that particular budget to, sorry, the particular budget, then we have to figure out how to make cuts to make that work, right? And that's where the priority list comes in. So that's the real work that we're engaged in, as we need to prioritize what's important to the Medfield Public Schools, right? And if it's personnel in certain areas or, other factors, that is where the work comes in to make those decisions, right? And so I think that's the word. I think the term ownership is what maybe, and I'm hearing about when it does read something scary like, oh, we're voting this is yes, but no, it changes constantly, and I think 9 times, 15 times, I think you're being generous. It probably changes daily, based on where Chapter 70 is coming in and where circuit breakers coming in, and those factors that go into the budget for the following year. And then we have the ESSER cliff we have to deal with as well. And I'm sure Michael is, has planned that well, that they will present to us when the time is right on how we're leveraging those dollars to make sure we get everything we can out of the, federal funding and the state funding we're going to get.
Yeah, and I just want to touch base on that December 14th. That's a very high level kind of budget. So we're updating the school committee, right? Kristen, you're part of those November meetings that we have with the warrant committee that have to do with the revenue sources, right? And because their revenue changes, they're looking at right now, if the last warrant committee is their free cash. Their free cash number is very high this year. They're going to certify probably the highest amount that they ever have in Medfield for free cash. So they're looking at what to do with those funds and how to, because certain free cash can only be used in certain ways, right? It shouldn't be used for operational dollars. It's usually used for capital, for OPEB, just different things. So they're looking at those revenues. They're looking at new growth. They're looking at, what the new growth.
Michael?
Yeah.
Michael, it might be helpful to explain what OPEB and capital expenditures are.
So OPEB is a liability that the town has that they have to be able to fully fund by a certain fiscal year, right? And that's a liability and an obligation, that has to do with the employees, okay?
And retirement insurance, health insurance going forward.
And so forth. So that is something that they have to look into, right? Because they have an obligation by a specific year, 30 or 35, that they have to fully fund that fund moving forward, okay? Then they look at the capital. There's 2 different types of capitals. They have their facility stabilization, which is a capital which is over $1 million that deals with any facility upgrades. And then they have a regular capital account, which is like vehicles, technology, anything that's not part of the physical building. So those are different avenues that they have to fund and how they're going to fund them, and those are the conversations that are happening right now. We had a capital committee meeting today. So the warrant committee is gathering all this information. They're also gathering the revenue, and revenue keeps on changing either at the federal level for funding and at the state level, right? Those numbers are usually not secured until we're done pretty much presenting our budget, and that's why there's tweaks back and forth. And what we're saying on December 14th, we're saying, not this is what the revenue source is going to be. We look at it from it, here are our needs and here are our wants, right? And we try to say, okay, on December 14th, if you look at what we need, for a budget, this is what it's looking like to fulfill our contractual obligations, the main point of it, and to move the district forward, right? As we move forward. So we present all that to you. You're going to be part of those meetings with the warrant committee. So you're going to have that information as we go on, right? So it's not, that meeting is not, this is the number, because that number changes. We could come in at 7%, right?
Yeah, understood.
But by the time that public hearing comes, right, with all the conversations that are happening back and forth, that number could go down to 4%. I mean, or it could stay at 7%. So that's what happens between that December 14th and that January 25th, right? It's all that back and forth, talking, refining the numbers as we're getting better numbers. Everything is an estimate, right? Because we're doing this a year before, the funding is going to happen. So we take certain things in consideration. That's how we establish our assumptions, right? So we have to establish our assumptions saying, this is what we're assuming is going to happen, and this is why we're building the budget on these assumptions. And you're going to have that information. I just want to walk through this. It's
No, I
to be more
appreciate it,
clear.
Michael. Thank you.
Okay. So I
I
have,
redo this then and bring it back for November. That makes sense?
You mean
so.
Just some of the
wording
wording,
changes?
I think,
Yeah,
but I think the
reading.
dates,
There's two areas that I'd see, but the part of me says I would prefer to vote this, and
Right.
move on. Because I was just pulling out what else we have to do in November, which is pretty
Go
dense.
dense again, yes.
And I want to, so I want to just consider the two changes that I saw in there was the February to March 2024, you have TBT meetings with warrant committee and opportunities. What did you say?
So additional opportunities for public input to the school committee and to change the budget or something like that, like something.
Right, like just
Revise the
something
budget,
that
something-
clarifies
Yeah.
that we are going to, that makes it clear that that's not the final budget that we're bringing to town meeting.
Right.
Right, I think
Let's
that's
just
kind
carry-
of the concern.
Tim, let's just carry a public, for every meeting we have, we're discussing the budget, just carry the public input part of it, right? We have that anyway.
We do that anyways,
anyway.
right? That's what I'm saying. The one area though that I agree in the way that the calendar reads, like I love the January 31 submission of the FY25 budget to selectmen and warrant committee. And if we said, that's what we're voting on,
Should say
on
Select
January
board.
25th,
Select
yeah,
board.
to select board. Public hearing, presentation of the operational and capital budgets, school committee vote on bringing this forward to the select board and warrant committee. Because that's what's the next step. So to me, I think we spent I think it's important to make sure we understand that process. So it's great. But I think that adds that clarity, that's what we're voting on January 25th. And
Oh, absolutely, and I think having, if it's Kristen, and if Kristen, you're gonna be that liaison, it's important to be at those meetings and hear it, like, I think what happens with the negotiation, and what tends to happen in every municipality, is the back and forth of what we're gonna give up and what they're gonna give up on the town side. We are the largest part of the budget, so it's very, it's hard, right? Because it's people versus roads, right? Or it's people versus other factions in DPW. And as Michael was saying, I'm glad to hear that we have, extra free cash to take off some of the capital items, because that will stop leaking roofs and upgrade the technology in some of the buildings, and things like that. So that's actually a good thing. But for us, it's gonna be that, to see where we are with where we are currently in our contracts, where we are with our contracts, to make sure we can meet our needs, to make sure we're going with the staff and keep our class sizes down, and, keep the programming the way we want it. So I think that's an important item, and I'm okay with talking about it more openly, more and more, more often, to get everyone up to date on the process. I think it's something that I think that the public needs to be more well aware of it. So, let's get people to the meeting to ask questions. I'm all for it.
Okay, so how does the committee feel about taking this forward with the vote? Just in general.
I support the dates.
I
We're
do.
voting on the dates.
So more correction on the dates, January 8th.
Correct.
Not
Oh,
a lot.
yes, correct.
and there's one on there on January 25th that says FY23 public hearing, there's just a typo. Say 25.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm good. Because I think I understand the process. I learned a lot a couple months ago when we had kind of a lot of the same discussion. And anyone listening to this at home that is emailing us or wants to talk budget, we have a long time to do that. After the
So, yeah, I'm good.
So just an example, just to kind of frame it a little bit, in last year, that first pass on December 8th, our increase that we presented was 5.65%. At the public hearing, the increase was 4.98%, and then the final in March was 4.23%. And then to Leo's point about the cuts, once we get in that February to May time, Michael, Kristen, and I would work to see to put some of the cuts in there and then bring them back to the committee to vote on the cuts. So if you look on the budget documents on the website, you can see how the progression of the budget each year and some of the reductions we've had to do.
Yeah. So was those percentages you were just saying, Jeff, is that what the town allowed us or what we were asking? Like we went from 4.8 to 4.7 to 4.2. Was that what like the whole, like that's what we had to be like even or you're saying?
Yeah, we got to the point of 4.23 with the town, like that
With the
last,
town.
that was
Yeah,
the
okay.
final one. Yeah, that was the final one. But the one we do in December, warrant committee would be here to see it, but we haven't really talked about it at that point. They come to the public hearing, and then from the public hearing on, I think our schedule, we in February, Michael, I think, that Steve showed us. So I think we're in February after the public hearing, and then we do the conversation with them, and then it's the push and pull to get it to what works for the town.
So the February is us presenting to the warrant committee, but prior to that, we're working with the liaisons from the warrant committee, and going back and forth.
And I guess I wouldn't want us to be naive either, like, the town works together. There's a good reason why the school department is housed inside the town hall with the town. They're working together, to do the best they can for the town of Medfield. And that's what we hire them to do. So, and they inform us to make those decisions. And so I think that I want the public to understand that that's what we're here to do. We're here for that process to make those, to make those decisions, to prioritize the needs based, in this case, it's based on our strategic plan, right? And that's why we have that strategic plan. And it all blends in together and how we're going to meet our goals, if that makes sense.
So I would want to bring this forward for a vote. Before doing so, I would, one more time, I'd state what the revisions are. Before doing so, there's been a lot of discussion about this, so I would be willing to open up before a vote to public input if there is any, based on the new information that was shared. And then having rewritten that policy last year, that was there was some there, but I think, so I would, unless, before doing that, is there any other
No.
conversation?
No.
From the group? Molly looks thrilled over here too. I was sincere when I said the fun part was with the principals. Who would have thought? Is there any public input either on Zoom or in the room? Yes.
Chris Potts, 7 Kerr Street. So I really appreciate this discussion. It's been great to listen to you guys talk about this. What I would urge you to do, and this is clearly, this is my motive here is about community engagement and allowing the public, parents, to be able to digest the budget, the proposed budget in bite-sized pieces. And there's an opportunity here to take for one, like the next school committee meeting, to ask Michael to just give a summary of the prior budget, based on what was submitted to DESE, highlights, high level, here are the things that we had budgeted for, here are the actuals, here are the things that are going to be rising to the surface with the new budget. Here are, unanticipated revenues, just a high level sort of synopsis of what has happened the past school year that will influence this budget going forward. Because then when you look at that detailed spreadsheet, it starts to make a little bit more sense. The prior budget, the actuals start to make a lot more sense with what the budget looks like. And that should influence the calendar. I mean, that should influence, how this plays out going forward, because it's not the budget. You're just giving people an educational look that would be taped. People can refer back to it. They can get a better understanding of how the budget worked. And that would be my only suggestion with tying a date to do that into the calendar.
Okay, thank you.
So I would just share with the committee that when we put out the budget online, as we have for years, we do have the previous year's budget in the actuals. So if I'm looking at the one from FY24, We have FY 21 budget, FY 21 actual, FY 22 budget, FY 22 actual, FY 23 budget, FY 24 request, and it's every single line item that we have in the budget. So we do provide that publicly prior to the public hearing.
Does it summarize them, or is it every line item?
It's,
So like, am I allowed to like?
it's every line item here.
I think Chris was.
I
don't know what Chris was saying, I'm just saying just in general thing.
As a general rule, let's stay in order. I mean, like, we're taking this to.
Well, yeah, I'm just, so I would like
There's-
to see, like, I don't, the businesses I own, I don't look at every line item, right? I'd like to see like a big like, that makes sense to me.
So,
we don't do that.
this is the
Wait.
calendar that we're trying to vote on.
Oh, sorry, I'm good with
Right?
the
So
calendar.
that's what we're talking
I'm
about.
good with
Let's vote on
I-
the calendar so
I
we can
think
continue with the
high
agenda in front of
level-
us. We have a lot to get through.
There's a workshop that Michael
I'm good with
holds
that.
around the budget.
Tim, I'd like to make a motion, to develop the calendar as amended with, Will's amendment from 23 to 25.
And the other amendments.
And the other amendment.
Yeah, the three were, changing the date to January 8th, right?
Yep.
For, the January 25th, the text under the January 25th.
Correct.
Including the clarity that it is for submission of the FY 25 budget to selectmen and warrant committee.
As amended. Yep.
Yeah, and then the third one, I think, is consistent with the language Jeff shared, which is the February to March 2024. I hear a motion.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
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 All right.
Okay, that was 5 ayes. Okay, thank you. Great discussion. So,
Did you have those notes? Okay, good, thank you.
now superintendent's goals, I think we said we were going to table that. Is that correct?
Yes.
I would like to table, I agree with tabling that when we align to the new strategic plan.
Well, yeah, there's a little discussion there, but so we'll just table that. Is it, I think, on there, and just in the interest of trying to make sure we have everybody present as we get through the others. School start times discussion, I think that's an update, is that correct?
Well, what we were gonna do there is have, sorry, find my notes. Talk a little about, why we're going through this and, kind of what the process is gonna be. Will and I met with Dr. Marsden. So I don't know, Jeff, if you want to share a little about what the process is gonna look like.
Yeah, I
in the
think we
beginning part.
talked about, looking at a timeline and working backwards. So the committee wanted to vote at the June 6th meeting, a recommendation from the committee. We'd look at doing something internally for the next, couple of months to get some folks on board with teachers and students and whatever, and have those conversations to see where we're at, and then put together a task force in, January, February, and work all spring to get to a point whether it's a recommendation to change or not change. And I think that we talked about having parents and teachers, students, administrators as a part of that committee and have those conversations all through spring. We also talked about like the appointment piece. I would try to appoint the staff members. You guys could appoint the parents, that kind of thing, on the task force, and then we could come to a recommendation, whatever that recommendation might be through the process. And that would give, if the recommendation was to change start times, that would give folks an entire year. So it would be a September 25 implementation to plans for babysitting, work, all that kind of stuff that might need to be adjusted based on start times being adjusted, and give people plenty of time to do that. So in that springtime, not only would there be meetings, but gathering feedback from parents, forums, those kinds of things to kind of get that information, so that we can get as much information as we can going forward. I think that's what we.
Yeah, so
kind
the
of
ask right now is
landed
to
on.
understand better, will there be a financial impact and what that will look like?
Right.
As well as some potential scenarios, right? Because while it might feel that there's infinite possibilities, there probably realistically are only a finite number
Right.
of things that we can really be looking at.
Especially that are financially neutral or close to
Right.
that.
Correct.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So the ask right now is for you to be able to do a little data gathering
Right.
now and then come back to us.
Because I think we want to have all that groundwork done before we get into a task
Correct.
force, so we can
Yeah.
actually have So people are wondering, what's the financial impact? Well, let's do that math
Right.
now and get all that information. That makes sense.
Well, and I think a big part of that's gonna be the impact on the elementary schools.
Oh, for sure.
Sorry, the elementary schools, if we're gonna have to change start times with different, schools, you know, if we're gonna flip the buses, there's gonna be an impact. And what parents think about, you know, having their kids go earlier to elementary school, right? So I think that's one big factor
Yeah, I
I've
mean,
been thinking about.
I think that's one model, Leo. I mean, one model is doing the flip. I feel like communities that have done that haven't had a lot of success with that. So I think we would have to make some changes, but I don't know if a flip would be the one that we look at, but that's kind of what we're gonna do the next couple of months, is trying to figure out, you know, what would work and then bring that to you guys to take a look at.
That sounds great. Yeah, I almost think it's, so that in January, you'd be assembling the task force.
Right,
Their job is to determine a recommendation if we change or not change.
right.
The assumption is that would be, we would vote on it in the spring, the end of the
So
spring.
June meeting.
Yeah, so we kind of work
and
backwards.
then
from
you'd
the
have a
June
12-month buffer
Correct.
before you implement. And I would just think the task force might actually say, you know, hey, we recommend we change. We also recommend we do additional, you know, knowledge gathering and sharing with the community.
Right.
And we don't think it would be such a great idea to vote on that in the spring.
Could be.
And,
Right,
yeah,
right, like it just,
to our previous-
because it may take a little while for everybody to absorb
Right.
what's going on. So that would be, to me, the only thing is change or not change, and vote now, or, you know, hey, we need more time.
Yep.
We need more time
Well,
is
well,
not a failure.
There's another factor here, like if it's gonna be a financial cost, right?
Right.
Can we actually afford to do it? And that's gonna be a conversation a year from now, at this exact same time, based on the budget process, right?
Right.
If it's gonna be a budget impact, what are we giving up, right? Or where are we getting that money to do it?
Right.
So that's gonna be another factor we have to take into consideration around the conversation.
So I think it sounds great, and I would think maybe, you know, like in the March or April, maybe give us an update,
Sure.
right? We'd want to add update. How's that going?
Yeah,
So
well, we want to make sure that it's staying on the agenda from now throughout, so that we can make sure
that's even better.
Yeah.
it's not, it's not falling by the wayside, it's staying in the
Okay.
forefront of our discussion and our minds.
Great. Let's see. Start times, other items since posting on October 6th.
Mr. Chair, but I could think of some if you want.
No, we're good.
Okay.
I think we're good. Okay, and so I didn't quite hit the time, but that's good. Those were great conversations. So at this stage, I'd say we keep trying
Yeah.
to get through it. Cell phone usage we covered, which was great. Actually, private school student enrollment follow-up. So I know I saw some things in the packet. And hello, Dr. Marsden's gonna start. I know, Krista, thanks for your help with this too.
In your packet, there is a quick memo that gives an update on the enrollment in terms of private withdrawal and then new enrollment that came in. So Kristen and I met on this and went through the numbers, and Kristen, we found it was a preschool kid that was on that list that should have been on that list.
Oh, that's why you were up.
Yeah, so
Okay.
you
I
got a
didn't
new
count the
one.
preschool.
Yeah, you got a new one that has 48, which is what it should be.
Okay.
And our one that we had yesterday, we put in the packet originally was 49. We found it was a preschool student that shouldn't have been on that list.
Right.
So if you look at the first table, we have all the grade levels on the left-hand side, and then these are apples to apples. These are the same kids. Okay, so these are students that said that they were going to withdraw their rising year. They're going to withdraw the next year. And then as of October 1, it's the number of kids in that grade level, that rising grade level that withdrew. So you'll see that fairly consistent, throughout. There's a couple more in in fifth grade. Interesting data point there in eighth grade. So we had 21 students that indicated that they were going to be withdrawing and going to private school in eighth grade. But that actual number is 16 because some folks came back. So over the summer, some families changed their mind and didn't withdraw, re-entered their kid in to the Medfield Public Schools and did not go. So that number is not 21, it's 16. You see the row, excuse me, the column on the right, which is green, at the totals as of. So we ended up with, in May, we had 32 students that we were told were going to be going to private school, K to 12. An additional 16 from May until our first day of school, essentially, or October 1, with a total of 48 kids. And then contrast that on our enrollments. We ended up having, in May, only had 19 new students enroll. But then typically what happens from May until, October 1 is when folks start to enroll, 66 additional students. So 85 is the total enrollment. The second page just gives you what the private withdrawal and new enrollment was for the previous 2 school years. So I know that'd be something you want to compare it to. You'll see that in 2021, 2022, the private withdrawal was 53 students and the new enrollment was 163. And that was kids coming back from COVID that were in private school in COVID or homeschooled in COVID. And then 2022, 2023, the withdrawal was 38 and new enrollment was very close to what we have now. It was 89 instead of the 85. So I know, Kristen, we had a lot of conversation about, so we looked at the data just to see where people were going, what schools, like we went through all that. So I also want to just recognize too that in addition, 34 students moved out of town, 4 students enrolled in vocational school, and 1 student elected to homeschool as a part of that as well.
My only question on this data is when it says new enrollment, is that anyone who enrolled in Medfield, or is that kids coming back from private school?
Could be either one.
Like, could be kids moving to
Moved
town,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah, most of it's moving to town, but there are
Right.
definitely kids that came back from private school.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So this was really just on the agenda so that we could provide an update from the spring. The reason we talked about it in the spring, which, I think arguably this time of year is better because we have the real numbers for the school year. But the reason we raised it in the spring was because there were a lot of members of the community that were talking about it, that were expressing some specific concerns about it. So the point was to really get in, start the process, kick off the process of doing the surveying, which I think is great. And, from spring to now, I don't think there's a difference in the numbers. There wasn't a dramatic difference in survey responses, a handful more. As Dr. Marsden said, I look at the list and, I've gone through, I went, 20 years back on the DESI site. I looked at us, I looked at neighboring towns. We are hovering in that 7 to 8%. That is, where we are. Unless there's something dramatic that shifts in that, I don't think that this is a topic of concern for our community as a whole that we need to be actively discussing. I would say the data is there. Anybody can get to it. They can go see how Medfield's doing against other towns, which I thought was very helpful. I love the survey that's been implemented, that we can keep an eye on this though, because I don't want to suggest that, there's not a fire here. This is something we should continue to pay attention to, observe, be on the lookout for. I did think it was interesting, looking at the schools, over 20 of the kids are going to gender specific schools. Another, and I never know if I should count Montrose as they're sort of not religious parochial per se, but there's, anyway, so also an equal number going to religious schools. In this day and age, that doesn't surprise me. There's a reason these schools are there, and there's a reason families may want to choose to adopt them. So I would say from where I'm sitting, looking at all the data, looking at how we compare across communities, I think it's important that we have a process to evaluate if people choose to leave, why they leave, continue to look for trends, and provide, annual updates at a high level, and encourage the public that the information is also publicly available. Anytime you want to go see, where we are, statistically against our neighbors, which can be quite fascinating. And there's also a direct tie, no one's going to be surprised, with affluence of a community and going to private school. That's also there. So just, there are some interesting things to look at, but, thanks for getting the updated numbers. We owed that back, so I'm glad we did it. And obviously, if anyone wants to reach out, I'm happy to talk to them.
And we talked about doing this every October, right?
Yes,
We put
we
it on
should-
every
we
October.
should,
We
yeah.
just make it an agenda item in October to give an update on where we are instead of doing the May one, but just give an update in October because we start to
That's the
get
real
that
data.
information and just, it's a good data point to look at, for sure.
Okay. Well, great, thank you. Strategic plan update.
So in your packet, I provided a couple of screenshots for the dashboard. I think that I had sent that to you to take a peek at too. So if you're okay with it, we'd like to really move forward with that and start to fill in everything and get it ready. I think the one thing that we need to do is decide how we're gonna calculate, you know, how much is done, like what factor we're gonna give to each one of those to calculate what percentage is done under each priority. So I think that Neil's gonna work on that a bit and then, you know, present something to me and I can send it your way to see what you think. Because it's really just, the way he has the gauge on there right now is just made up. It's not something that is actually happening. So you want
Yeah, Jeff, I think that'd be really helpful if, you know, you and your team would put like a weighting category of some sort, like,
yeah.
you know, 1 through 5, you know, for each part of that. And just because I want to be fair to you and your team too, right? So if there's one light part of that, they get all the way to green, right? They're all green across the board because it was a light lift versus somebody else. So let's see what, you know, is there a way to do that? And I don't want to overcomplicate this. And, you know, and Tim, you get the analytics piece, especially when it's qualitative, you know, analytics, you know, it's very hard, you know, and just whatever you feel, Jeff, I think, you know, coming back to it, but I just want to be fair across the board to everyone about the effort, right? There's going to be a lift to some of these items that's going to be really large. So how do we do that in a meaningful way so that it's, how we do that in a meaningful way so that people, it reflects well on the efforts that are being put into it. I think that's my only concern. I want the dashboard to be fair on both us as a committee and on you as you and your team, and, you know, obviously all your teachers and everybody else in this process. So I guess that's the qualitative part that I'd like to make sure is fair in the process.
So I feel like we could launch the dashboard without that piece right now, because I mean, once they finish it, we could launch
I agree.
it, you know, because we're in the beginning stages of it now. So we could figure out the weighting and what the value is going to be for each one of those. You know, I could bring it in November or something for you guys to take a look at and see. I feel like we can still get it out there so people can see what it looks like, you know?
So, and I want to just make sure, because this is all I do professionally. And
can you weight them for us?
Immediately you do get geeked out by the dial.
Yeah.
Just how it works. And then you saw, I gave Jeff some feedback immediately. I said, okay, well, how do the dials roll up?
Yeah.
And I think part of what I'm hearing in my own experience is the dials may not always roll up.
Right.
It may unfortunately be one of those things that you have. Those are, you know, so I agree with what Leo's saying. I'd rather, you know, on this one, I'd rather get something out and, you know, continue to get better.
Okay.
That recognize this is, call it a transition year. You know, we're putting
Yeah.
something new that we haven't done.
Right.
And I just don't want to get those scores, or that if it is waiting.
But I'd rather get it out too. Tim, I'd rather get it out and get the exploration going so that the lift can be assessed, right?
Right.
Jeff deploys teams on these right now, and they may come back and say, Jeff, this is going to take us forever, right? This is going to take us forever. We're going to need X, Y, and Z. And he's going to have to come back to us and say, listen, we can break this out into different pieces and make that happen. So, I mean, it's a complicated item. Some of these, it's great to set the goals, but the path to the goals could be a longer path than expected, right?
Leo, would you anticipate?
Just for our community, for other reasons.
Would you anticipate some of
like a
that
road to a new
weighting?
school? You never know.
Let's see if
That's going to take some time for us.
Leo, would you anticipate the weighting and the establishment of that to be extremely complicated?
I would release it until we get to the point. I would invest it on the fly. Because I would say the weighting, come on, that's a moving target too, right?
No,
That's
it
an
is,
extremely
for sure.
moving target. It's each one of these is going to have their own. I mean, if you want to set someone on it, like I would say it's a combination of human time to deal with, adoption time, which, God, that measuring that is you can put it to your team and say, what do you think it's gonna take to adopt this? Is each one of those goals. And then, a combination of, the human time, the adoption time, and then whatever funding is involved, right? Can we fund it? So those are the 3 items that I would categorize, to develop what's, I call it lift, but what it is, it's the effort, right? What's the effort to accomplish the goal? And how do you measure adoption, right? Each one of those is gonna have, their own adoption measure. And it's a complicated matter, right? It's complicated, and I don't want to overcomplicate it in that sense for us, but that's why I would say I would get it out there and let the public see it, for sure. And then we to Tim's point, I would adjust it on the fly.
Okay.
Because it is so qualitative, and it's not quantitative,
Okay.
right? And when you're trying to create quantitative out of qualitative, it's always, it's a moving target sometimes.
That makes sense. That brings up, we'll have them work on it. I'll bring it back and see, but let's try to get it out next week maybe and get it posted. So the second part of the plan is that, we got the revised plan this afternoon, with the revisions on it and corrections and all that. So, we'll be good to do hopefully both by like next Tuesday or Wednesday, something like that. Get it out to the community, put it on the website, with a narrative and an email, and get that link out. And then, the staff has seen the draft. I did a faculty meeting today and went through it with them for 2 schools today, and I have 2 schools in another week or 2. So they'll get it anyway, but I've been through it with them as well.
You happy with it?
Yeah, it looks really nice. They did a great job with it. They did some nice revisions for us. The way they incorporated, and you guys have seen it, but the way they incorporated the clock,
I see those clocks everywhere now.
isn't unbelievable.
It doesn't represent everything that's,
You see them everywhere. Every college visit you go on, there's one there, and they all say electric time on them. I mean, it's pretty cool. So, a little slice of Medfield everywhere you go, for sure. So they've done a great job with that, but should be ready to get that out Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay.
I want to just break off one, as I was scanning, looking for that scorecard, I saw one thing. If you don't mind, Leo, just a yes or no for tomorrow on that policy meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
but I do need to leave at 10:30.
Okay, I think we're fine. So Jim had asked, and I just wanted to give him the courtesy, and we'll revisit that in a minute. Okay, good work on the, great work that's continuing. The scorecard is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
We're making some great progress there.
Okay. Let me just say yes. I normally do not. I'm really practiced not multitasking in that one. I was looking something up. So, let's see. Okay, goals discussion. Are we? Just take a read the room for one or 2 minutes before we go, because it's 9:30, so we're about 2.5 hours.
I think we should table it to the next meeting.
Yeah, goals. I'm okay at least with a few, but I'm wondering. I see one. Building committee updates pretty quick. Community engagement. Yeah, I just want to. I think we should be tabling a couple of these. Are we? How does everyone feel?
Yeah.
Continuing, maybe reassess in 15 or 20 minutes.
I mean, I think we've got through all the
I think goals.
critical
I
stuff.
think most, that's what I was going to say. I just want to get general signal. So it's like,
I would say table goals right now. I think the other stuff's going to be quicker.
So let me
See
ask
where we're at.
before tabling is, we posted the goals, I think, as of Friday.
Okay.
Revisions to the goals. I did get feedback from individuals. We haven't talked about it as a group. I feel that we've reflected that feedback. So I wouldn't mind at least having a quick, if I'm not suggesting run the meeting, but change the meeting yet. Part of the intention on some of these, we want to get them, get things approved in order to continue to move. So,
But I don't think, we're doing these, like Michelle already moving forward, scheduling the office hour. I mean, it's not stopping us from moving forward on anything, right?
So let me ask it a different way, because the goals is not something we vote on at this stage. It's putting it out there. Is there anything?
If we're not voting it and it's after 9:30, I think we can table it. And
Okay.
I echo Kristen's sentiment. We're working on these right now, so.
Yeah, I think they're, I mean, I think, they're seeing that. Okay, so we'll table that.
But I have one question before we do table it, because one of the things we talked about is that we didn't want to keep discussing goals until February, right? So was there any major feedback that we need to be discussing right now, or having all of us here together?
My only comment would be, and I've been guilty of this. I don't even know if the word is guilty. I'm not always, I haven't always read through everything at the level I might have. So if we are going to talk about it, maybe spend 1 or 2 minutes as to what changed. Get a
This
general.
looks, what you drafted here for focus this year is exactly what we're doing today, so. I'll be honest, I like it.
So I'm going to spend 1 or 2 minutes, and I did put comments in there, and I'm wide open to tabling it as well. But I want to just, if there's disagreement, that's great. In any, let's see. We'll just do this from memory. The major, I think the guidelines stayed identical. The goals, I think, there was some great feedback around making sure, hey, if we have focus areas for the strategic plan, isn't that our goals? I say Leo actually shared that, and I thought that was really tremendous feedback. And I think we,
I do want to apologize for that, Tim. I think I was a little over the top in the last meeting. I won't say that. I do apologize. I may have gotten a little passionate.
No, I agree though.
I think the essence of the conversation was absolutely dead on. That's why we're all here. So, but I felt like I may have been.
No, it was great. That was where I felt funny, was we don't want to have a process on top of goals and other goals. Well, I think by saying we're going to support the district in pursuit of the strategic plan focus areas, which Dr. Morrison had presented to us, and we link right into that strategic plan, I think that's great. The actual goals that we had, really, those that were in the focus areas of the strategic plan, they're referenced there.
Yeah.
So the number is reduced, but that's as to what's called out.
Yep.
And then the second, the items that are not specifically, the administration, or there are things that fall a little bit outside. So, but we are accountable for them. So that's really where the policy manual, bringing the policy manual online, was, that's not directly in there.
Yeah.
The community, we're trying some new things, so we
Yeah.
call out what those new things are. The Dale Street project, I think the 2 public forums, it's not specifically in there. We think that, I think I didn't hear feedback negatively about that.
Right.
And we had a great conversation tonight about budget, which is one of the most, the critical things we do. So that was, the idea was, though, trying to align to the focus areas in future years. As those focus areas come forward, we might listen a little more, because, hey, if I want to see, X or Y, we want to make sure we're communicating that.
Mm-hmm.
And then calling it out. So I love the fact that it did fit in one page.
Yeah.
So Michelle, you asked a question a couple minutes ago. What was that question?
Well, I just wanted to, I recognize that we want to table it, but I also don't want to be tabling this or discussing this till February. So was there any major things that people wanted to have everybody here?
It sounds like we're not tabling it, so I don't see anything glaring on it. I like it.
I don't, it's pretty straightforward. It's either things that we're already doing or are expected to do, so I don't think it's anything above and beyond that. I think, Tim, you and I talked about one thing that I might put under the category of student engagement. Doesn't have to show up as a goal, but it was more for us to reflect on how we engage with the student representatives, maybe in a, more productive way. And that's just something that we don't have to talk about now. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a goal, but it was just I was thinking of it at two high levels, community engagement, but also student engagement, and where there are opportunities for us to be more tightly knit with that group based on some of the things that we've read about, the expectations of those student representatives. So that's just something.
No, I
I'd like to see
agree.
us do.
There was some conversation, I think good conversation that could even fall under tonight's agenda item around, one of the items that's a standing item around community engagement and communication. But high level, Kristen had some great ideas around, maybe do we reconfigure this room a little bit? So that it's just feels a little more like a round table.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that round table may have to shift. But those themes, yeah, I think some of the things in the goals, theoretically, you talk about, hey, these are some ideas during the year that could become goals for next year. But Kristen, I'm all for that. And I think following one of them, apply to the whole committee and like that one, to put that in there, it just didn't feel right. But yeah, I was, so I guess we're not tabling it. I mean, Will, any other?
You said it's published and we don't vote on it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's not something we vote on, not a policy.
No.
Yeah.
So, and I think, again, the guidelines haven't changed. And the one thing we would do is we would revisit this at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Like, we're not getting into scorecards of things at this stage.
Right.
How did we do? Modeling, I forget what district it was, but
End of year or the retreat.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Great.
And I do agree that we may not get through, we may table a couple others, so. SBC update.
SBC?
Do you want to give it or do you want me to give it? I don't know. I don't think there's much new. When did we meet last time? Did we meet before Medfield Day?
Last week. I think we
No,
met.
no, I'm sorry. I meant when did the school committee meet?
Oh.
Before Medfield
Yeah.
Day. Okay, so SBC had a booth at Medfield Day, just to create more of a connection to the community, let the community know that the SBC is there. The conversation sort of continued around, what are ways we can do to better engage. I think we're still waiting to have some conversation about MSBA funding, but I think there's a push to do more of the due diligence earlier. So that was part of the discussion at the last SBC meeting. Is there an opportunity for us to engage with someone to, help with that assessment of the viability of some of the locations and the viability of renovation versus build, so that we are getting ahead of those topics and making sure that we have real data on what's possible and what's not possible and where it's possible. And I think that's something everybody on the committee is somewhat hungry for. So I would say that.
Kristen, in
Yes?
response to that, has anyone decided to look at the $1 million worth of data that we collected in the last feasibility study?
No, Leo, no one's looking at that. Sorry.
Okay, I mean, we spent
I'm- I-
$1 million.
I know, I'm
was
sorry.
curious if that-
I'm not, I'm not,
the room, Leo.
yeah. You're not
I'm not
here.
reading the room. I guess.
No, you're not.
That's fine. We did spend $1 million of our, money on that. So I'm assuming that is brought to the table, and Mike Webb is there leading that charge.
Yes, Mike is there and obviously has the history, and he's been helping to acquaint the SBC with some of the history and the facts. So, but what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that the documents are there too. So I
Facts
think
are good.
once we get to
Facts
that,
are very good.
once we get to that
I
point, we
think-
can look at the feasibility study that was done and see what we can use and what we can't use. So we'll absolutely be able to use some of that. There's no question about that. The other piece is we're having a joint meeting.
Joint meeting, yes, on November 14th, not the 7th, 14th.
I know I had the 7th before.
Yeah.
It's the 14th.
14th.
Okay, that was one of my big questions, was what was the date?
November 14th. It's a
Okay.
Tuesday.
So that's select board, SBC, and school committee.
Yes,
And
and I
warrant
believe part of
committee.
the warrant committee will
And
be there
warrant
as well.
Well, we invited them, yeah. I
Yes.
think that was the hope.
Is that at
Is that at
7?
7?
Yeah, yes,
And so, and the SBC is the one who's accountable to
correct.
manage it. Okay.
Is that in Neil Street?
That is what we had talked about. I can double check with Mike and
That was
Meredith.
the hope.
Yeah.
Okay. We should be able to do that.
Okay.
And we can talk about logistics later, but not now, but we could probably talk about how we want to, we did that last time during the last process. We had it here. And we just made a square so everyone can sit and talk to each other. You know?
Okay.
So it wasn't trying to look and talk. Everyone could see each other. So whatever, we can decide what we want to do.
Yep.
Remember we did one in the summer at Dale?
Yep.
I do.
Okay.
You did it at Mr. D's room. It's the only one with air conditioning.
Rolling.
That was in the calf.
Community engagement and communication, I think that in some ways you table, I know there's one topic around the,
Informal conversations.
yeah, informal conversations. You wanted to update that?
Sure. So we have tentative dates set. I sent them out to everybody. So our first one will be Monday, December 4th, a virtual meeting. I think it's Tim and Will. So just a quick review on how this works. So we'll publish approximately 2 weeks in advance. We'll set up a Google form that will allow members of the community who want to attend to list questions or topics that will allow school committee members to gather additional information to be able to talk about the subject. The concept around the informal conversations is that your 2 school committee members are available to meet and discuss with the public any item under the purview of the school committee. There's no set agenda, and since the sessions only have 2 committee members, it's not an official school committee meeting, and therefore open dialogue is permitted on topics that fall under the schools. So we'll be posting stuff to the patch, Hometown Weekly, our social pages, coming up with that, and basically using most of the verbiage from last year, unless you had anything you wanted to update or change. So
No, they were good last year. I mean, my only suggestion is keeping them, I won't say unstructured, but keeping them open.
yeah, they should be open and
agile.
an hour. So
I like the idea. I didn't even know you did that when I started one last year, but like the public can kind of give us a jump, so Tim and I can kind of like get
yeah.
our bearings in whatever topic comes up.
I mean,
whether it's,
people
like,
can still
budget or
attempt, but
school.
yet if they have a very specific question that they want to talk to you about,
Yeah,
you
Yeah,
know
I
what I mean? Like you
appreciate
can have
that.
time to get information about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone who's gonna come to those,
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the more time I have, the better.
I think that's the thing. When I say open, agile, the spirit is we're collaborating. And,
Right.
and that,
Yeah, I think
we'll
those
see
things
how
are
that
awesome.
goes. But no, and thank you. I know you did some
Sure.
extra work with that.
The only other quick thing, and we don't have to talk about it right now, but we had talked about the lens on learning.
Oh, yes.
So we can add that to next time, but
Right.
we had talked about other ways to get the school in here, and when they were talking earlier about some of the things they wanted to talk about,
Right.
I felt that would fall under that
So
space.
years ago, we did on the school committee agenda, with every meeting, or every other meeting, we would have students come in or teachers come in and just do kind of a lens on learning, like basically what's happening, good stuff happening in the schools, that kind of thing, as a part of the school committee meeting. So we had talked about maybe adding that whenever you folks would like to do that.
Yeah.
I think I've shared that in our meetings as well.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
having, it'll be great to get the input next week or next time from the elementary students. And maybe that's like part of that second half update.
Yeah,
We're bringing site
yeah.
council in the first half, second half, maybe they're bringing in.
And we have
I would-
R&D coming up too, so that would be
Right.
a good time for teachers to speak to as well.
Okay.
So yeah, so why don't we, I mean, that would, next meeting, that would fall under the community.
Right.
Community engagement and communications. We're all starting to lose some of the momentum. I, for the record, am going to suggest I'll let you, oh wait, we're up to there now anyways, right? We're up to, and I wanted to check on that. It is first reading, the Medfield Public School Policy Review for ADF and IMGA. I'm saying that we're into first reading, right? We did,
First reading.
yep, okay, it's because we did informational before, and then I was gonna suggest we table the policy update at this stage, because I just don't know that we're gonna be able to do it justice.
But it's our goal.
I am so
What do we
confident.
talk about? Like,
Okay.
first read, so I looked at it, like, what
Yeah.
do we talk about?
Yeah, so let's, I'm sorry, I'm starting to waver. So let's talk about the wellness policy.
It's not like you just flew in from Europe. Look at you.
Yeah, I was in London this morning,
So-
so, or whatever.
You
But
don't even know
anyways,
where he was.
but no, yeah, let's talk about the wellness policy and service animal policy, and then, otherwise we would table the, I think the broader policy project. maybe I'll give you one or two hints of what's happening, but maybe table the, in the first reading, because I feel okay. So, Dr. Marston, though, can you?
Yeah, so at our last meeting, Brittany Hardiman, our nurse leader, had some feedback and went over the wellness policy with you. And Mary Brule was also here, talking about the service animal policy. I think, there's been no changes since the last meeting. So if you folks want any changes or would like me to look at anything prior to the next reading, I'd be happy to do that.
I had nothing. I mean, I honestly thought we walked away from the last one with everything we needed, so I didn't have anything on those.
I agree.
If you think of something, just shoot me an email.
Okay.
We can look at it.
Okay. Sounds good. I will, or here's what I would, let's say, I think we were, actually, all we had, we might as well try to, for the, for the whole overarching policy manual process, we're continuing to move that forward. I think, Leo and I have actually scheduled meetings with, Jim Hardy, all the way through the end of December. I've worked with Andrea. We have a schedule whereby we think we will have by then reviewed the entire manual. And we would be continuing to bring sections to the committee, after those meetings. And in theory, I think the way we're scheduling it, be able to vote on those into the second half of the year so that we would be able to move the entire manual by the end of the year. So that process is moving pretty well. Let me just look real quick at this stage. I have a spreadsheet that we looked at, but we have backing up. That's fine. I was looking for. Yeah, so we've I think last time we reviewed sections E and F, which I believe are in the packet at this stage, and presented as informational. And I want to actually let me make sure I'm sorry, section E, which was support and services, and section F, which was facilities management. So we brought those forward as informational. I think we're planning on reviewing sections G, personnel, and section H, negotiations, tomorrow with Jim Hardy. And
You want me to there for that one, right?
yes, I think if that's what we said before. And that meeting's at 10 o'clock tomorrow, or at 9:30. Okay, thank you. And we are bringing forward section C, which we reviewed back in the spring. We brought that forward already as a informational, but section C, fiscal management, and I'm sorry, section C, general school administration, section D, fiscal management, forward as first reading. We brought that back for informational in the last meeting. And even on there, I'm going to suggest, because I can ask if there's any questions, if anyone studied it and wants to ask, but I actually think at this late hour, I would want to bring that forward as first reading in the next meeting. So that we can give it.
It is 9 o'clock tomorrow.
It's 9.
It's 9 a.m., yes.
Thank you.
Leo, do you get that 9 a.m. tomorrow?
So don't
Oh, yeah.
questions.
I'll be there.
We're good.
No,
Next
if
time, is that what we're saying?
excuse me.
We'll do it. We'll just do that next time.
Yeah, and if there's any, questions or what we're doing right now is we're refining the process a little more so that we're not bringing things forward that haven't been through our reviews, then through the administration's reviews, and to make sure we're focusing on right and not rushed, and in some cases carving elements out and saying, hey, let's do that like that policy is as is, let's not make unnecessary changes. What we've been working, and in the last meeting, if you wanted to check the minutes, they're fascinating, or even the live events. We are working on a spreadsheet that I think will be very nicely lay out exactly how we're doing it. And the spreadsheet, I was going to try to bring it forward and put it in the packet. It had still lots of acronyms in it and some things that I think would have caused confusion. So we don't quite have it, but it's nicely, it's pretty simple, A and B, informational, first reading, second reading, vote. You should be able to see them all stairways working down where we have a schedule.
Don't worry, you guys will hear all about it tomorrow morning when you show up at 9 o'clock. I'll bring bagels, Blue Moon, and you'll hear all about it.
Yeah. So it's moving along. Talking, it is moving along, and that's what I say. But Kristen, do you have questions too?
About the policy?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. But I would, for that, we're gonna pause before bringing that for a second reading, because what I think we're gonna start doing though is, getting to voting on them, which we would start with A and B.
Yeah.
Then we'll run there, and it's not really pausing, but it's bringing up if there is any comments, you get to review them. Okay, so I've hit the wall as well, if anyone didn't notice. I think that, is there that agenda jumping back and forth? I think that's,
I think we made it.
yeah, we had informational items.
Oh, I had a lot of fun at Plymouth today with
Heard
the
about
third
that.
graders. It was a great day.
Or their buses?
Shortened
The
day?
buses, it was short. Still great. We had great weather, lots of fun.
Yeah,
Third
there's
grade.
bus strike, or not just strike, but
Shortage
bus
of drivers,
shortage
yes,
of drivers
yes,
everywhere.
yes.
Cross country finished their season undefeated. Middle school.
Awesome.
Great job.
Sounded like the girls' BTS when the screaming earlier.
Yeah, was that varsity or?
Yeah, it's varsity. They're up 1-0. It was against Oversharing.
I know.
Okay, and no, I think other than that, future agenda items, there's a few that we're gonna work on, but right now we have district fees. And it's future, I can't promise an error. I think I actually did a quick scan though, we're doing okay, nice work. That folder's saying we're ready to roll.
No, I thought we were.
We're ready to roll.
Everyone else is.
I'm looking at this
Oh, no.
agenda, making sure, I'm gonna put a little check mark here.
My
Check right there. And next meeting, I'm showing November 2nd, so do I hear a motion?
To adjourn.
Second.
So moved.
Kristen got second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.
That's never good.